Right. So the first knowledge area was done already, business analysis, planning and monitoring. The second knowledge area called elicitation and collaboration as a part of JAT session we have discussed so far. Whereas the third knowledge area is called enterprise or strategy analysis. So enterprise analysis is the third knowledge area where we need to understand about the functional and as well as business aspect of a customer. So there are 5 stages normally here. Here we have. In the first stage, we need to define the business need. You need to define the business need. So if you want to define a business need for any of the customer, make sure we should understand about the kind of goals and objectives of the business which customer wants to achieve. Because that is where, even earlier I said, understanding about the goals and objectives of the business is required. Because any organization you see, there is a structure, like there is a vision. To reach that vision, there is a mission to be followed. Next, there are some objectives and goals they want to achieve. These goals and objectives may be a long-term objective, or those may be a short-term objectives or goals, right? So because first of all, short-term goals will be there. So these short-term goals will be converted as a long-term goals in future. Next, in order to reach or in order to perform these goals and all, what strategy an organization is implementing and what kind of tactics do we require to follow, right? So these are the things which, being a business analyst, we should understand from the business context, not from the technical part. Okay, there are two different things. Technical context, design level, the existing infrastructure, right? So possibilities, feasibility, those are all different, right? Because before that, apart from that, there are some business context you should understand. So what is that you have to do? First of all, you should understand the business goals and objectives of the customer. These are the inputs must be taken by a business analyst to define the business need. Because unless until if you don't understand the goals and objectives of the business, defining the business need would be difficult. Now, above all means if you want to know about the business goals and objectives, the very first thing is that you need to study the system. System study is required. This system study will be categorized into 2 different parts, but I have mentioned it as 3 different parts here. But of course, the third part I'll explain in some time. Let me explain you about the 2 things first. If you see here in this diagram, business analysts try to understand stakeholders. First of all, they have to understand the stakeholders from the context of 3 different systems. One is existing system, second called proposed system, and third we call it as future system, right? So 3 points. Existing system in BA terminologies, we call it as is. Proposed system is called as to be. Okay, there are 2 different points. As is, second is to be. Proposed system is called to be. These are all terminologies we use in BA. Because normally in regular understanding, we call it as existing, proposed, future, all that. But being a BA, we use the terminology is called as is and to be. So business analysts have to understand the existing system first. If you want to understand the existing system, means traditional point of sale system, okay, as far as the case study of mine I have given, because as I told you, right, whatever example I give, based on the case study only, so that it has a clarity and discipline. Now, if you want to study an existing system, these are the points you have to consider. The first point, what is this existing system is all about? Means what exactly the traditional point of sale system. If it was an existing traditional system, if you feel. So what exactly this point of sale system is all about? Point number 1. Point number 2, what are all the features are involved in it? What features and functionalities are involved? Yesterday, I have shown you some features. If you remember, on a Word document, I have shown you. So one should understand about the kind of features which are involved in it, followed by features and functional and non-functional requirements, everything, right? So that we should know. Next, how is this performing? Means how this application is performing. Performance is not only from the accuracy level and speed, because performance means normally we consider from the speed and accuracy point of view. Not only that, satisfaction level point of view, because is it rightly satisfying the need of the customer is not. That's what generally performance stands for, right? How is this performing now? Because the system which was developed earlier, they may have a limited business, but now the business have grown to the next level. Customer base has increased. The kind of products they were selling in their stores and all, everything were increased a lot. Now this application may have a performance issue. May not be the system performance all the time, right? Performance need not be only accuracy, performance, load balancing, all that, but even satisfaction level is also, and another point has to be considered. Next, based on that, we need to understand the kind of problems they are facing. It was there in the case study. I hope you have gone through that. Next, where are they facing? In which aspect this problem is being faced? Means, for example, if you take the case study, system performance and data centralization are the two problems. System performance from the context of billing, because when you face the problem of system performance, whenever there is a billing happens due to the performance of the systems or for whatsoever reason, if the billing got delayed, this is where the problem you will be facing, right? So delay in billing. This delay in billing may leads to decline in sales over a period of time. If this is being ignored by a store owner for a long time, this may leads to reluctancy of the people to come to the store. It may leads to decline in sales over a period of time, because decline in sales may not happen immediately over a period of time. So where are they facing has to be identified by you. This is with the help of technical team if you require. Okay, underline this point, because that is also the considerable point to be understood with. Next, how intense the problems are, because if you know about the intensity of the problem, you will be knowing about how fast this project or solution to be provided. So first of all, we have to study the as-is system, or which is called existing system. That has to be identified. Point number one. So once you have studied the existing system, the next you need to study the proposed system. What is meant by proposed system? What is that you are about to develop? It could be a cloud-based point of sale system, or it could be anything, right? So it could be anything. One should understand about the proposed system. Means in this proposed system, what kind of solution are they expecting? Because expectation from the end user as well as stakeholder point of view should also be considered. So what kind of solution are they expecting? Should have a knowledge first to us, because that is through interacting with stakeholders and all, you'll be knowing. Anyway, in JAT session, we have interacted, we get to know some points usually, right? So first point. Second, how immediate are they expecting this? This is based upon the urgency, so that you will be knowing about the urgency here, right? How immediate are they expecting this to be developed? That is also another thing we have to consider. Now, the third point is that what are their expectations? Do they have any expectations from any of the context? That also should be known to us well in advance. Followed by this expectations, constraints, because when you are developing an application or a solution, there are some possible constraints. Because not only that, whenever we are doing a task, there are some constraints we could identify first. So based on that, what are all to be corrected will be done by us accordingly, right? So what could be the possible constraints? All these things must be studied under the proposed system, right? So proposed system, nothing but the one you are about to develop or you are planning to develop. This may not have a clarity now, right? So you may get a clarity over a period of time. You may not get a clarity in the initial time. That happens. And that too, multiple solutions will be suggested by different people, and what is possible and all will be identified among that. That's how generally we do the process. So existing system, which is called as is, has to be identified first, studies to be. Next, proposed system, which is called to be, has to be identified by the BA. He's trying to understand this. Next, future system. Future system is absolutely an optional thing, because future system means what could be their future needs. That has to be understood, because when you are developing a solution, there is a business angle hidden to that. Because anyway, any business has a business angle, any service. Because you need to retain your old customers, you have to get new customers. This is what generally any enterprise says, which is not wrong, right? In the end of the day, you are giving it, as long as you are giving a quality service to the customer, expecting to retain them at your repository is not wrong anywhere, as long as you are giving a quality and accurate services. Nothing wrong in it. So future system we have to understand from the business angle. Point number one. Second, future system you have to understand to reduce the capital cost as well as the maintenance cost of the customer. So this must be a win-win situation everywhere, because it's not only a client you are dealing with, but it must be a win-win situation. Customer should not feel difficulty in maintaining the application, to manage the infrastructure or to manage the application and all. It should not be a burden to the customer in future days. So the kind of solution you are going to provide must be a beneficial to the customer to manage even in future needs also. So what will happen now, whenever you have developed the proposed system now, there are possibilities to retain your customer by adding some new features and functionalities with the limited cost. With the limited cost, you can manage all that. This is where generally future system is being used on that context, because customer should not feel difficulty while using this application, and as well as to upgrade this to the next level, that should happen with the minimum cost, as minimum as it can. So then customer will be happy, right? So that what is that you require, you have to understand the future system, projection about future, how it will happen. So how it could, right? So that sort of understanding is also essentially required for you being a BA. So existing system you should know, proposed system, future system. This is what generally the study we do here. This is where generally it comes under this. If you want to define the business need, if you want to understand the business goals and objectives behind this is what you have to do. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone, or any doubts in this regard?
No, we are good.
Right. Now, here is an assignment I am giving to you. Okay. Because why I am repetitively asking is that I am going to provide you an assignment. You can write down, or else I'll text it. You can write down that. So I want you guys to, whoever are interested to write, you can do the assignment, which is optional, of course. That is depends on your professional constraints, all that. I want you to identify the business goals and as well as objectives of the customer. Followed by this, I want you to define the business need based upon the case study which was given to you. Again, I'm repeating, I want this as an assignment, not as immediate, maybe, because till next week we have sessions till next week, but as earliest as you can. If you can provide me by tomorrow also, it's fine, because this is for you to understand better, not for me. So I want you to do, and I want you to write the business goals and objectives followed by the need of the business, what you have understood from the customer perspective, right? This is an assignment I'm giving as of now. This is point number one. Once you have defined the business need here, because defining the business need is what you have to do, is one thing. Second, you have to do capability gap. You have to assess the capability gap. Now, can anyone say what exactly capability gap stands for? Anyone? What is meant by a capability gap? What does it mean? Can anyone say what capability gap stands for? What is meant by a capability gap?
My assumption is it will be around the current capabilities that we have and the future capabilities required to meet
Yes.
the respective business.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, carry on. You carry on, please. Please continue.
yeah, so say for instance, our own example, say for instance, we were on-prem and we want to migrate to cloud with Azure. So say for instance, within internal organizations, we may not have those many handful of resources who have the experience of migrating to Azure. So then comes 2 point, as in then further solution part will come in, whether you want in-house solution or you want to hire someone from outside and delegate those particular kind of tasks. So that's what my understanding is about.
Right. Thank you. Right. So thank you, Manoj. Manoj?
Abhishek, sir, Abhishek Bajpayee.
Abhishek. Yeah. Thank you, Abhishek. Yeah. See, assessing the capability gaps is what generally, thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Abhishek. So assessing the capability gaps is what we have to do. If you want to assess the capability gap, first of all, this is an extension to the earlier one. Because if you remember, you can see there are some inputs will be taken, inputs based on the need. Whatever the business need are the input we have taken. So there is an interconnection. If you want to do the business need and you need to identify the objectives and goals, you have to study the existing system, right? So that is what I said. So when you are trying to assess the capability gaps, you need to understand the existing followed by the proposed or the future state, whatever you can call, right? So some people say proposed, some people say future state, whatever it is. So assessing the capability gaps between what you are and what you want to be. This is what it is, right? So where you are and where you want to be. To fill the gap, whatever the work you do is what we call it as capability gaps. If you want to remember, or if you want to do gap analysis, or if you want to perform gap analysis, there are 3 points you have to consider, and you have to remember 3 points. The first thing, how our process could help organization or a people to succeed. First point you have to understand, because this is for the people and for other organization, right? By catering and by understanding both the people into an account. How our process could help people and organization to succeed. This is point number 1. Second, what holes in the process do we need to fill? What are the gaps you have identified? Because these gaps could be anything. This gap could be a functional gap. It could be a non-functional one. It could be in security or maybe something relating to the functionalities, or it could be relating to the user interface, whatever it is, right? So what are the gaps we have identified? Those gaps, what kind of gaps you have identified? What are the holes, right? So are the gaps you have identified in the process do we require to fill? That has to be identified here. Next, the third point is that how could we simplify this process? Because end of the day, even for to develop this or to use it, the process must be as simple as it can. Then only this gap analysis, the performing of gap analysis will be mainly useful to the people. This is where generally gap analysis come into picture. Gap analysis, the one is what we connect between two things. One is about the one which you have now and what you want to become, right? So to bridge the gap between these two things is what we have to do, gap analysis. So for that, you have to study the existing one. You have to study what could be the one we are about to develop. What are all the gaps we have identified in between these two? This is what generally you need to know about gap analysis. So assessing the capability gaps is what you have to do being a business analyst team. So if you want to do that, apart from the study, whatever I have mentioned you so far, apart from that, you should be able in a position to understand the enterprise architecture. You should be able in a position to understand the enterprise architecture. Now, what is meant by an enterprise architecture here? Right, so that understanding is required. So enterprise architecture is as follows. Just give me a minute. I will show you.
Sir, it is there next to enterprise architecture.
No, everything will be mentioned as enterprise architecture here because I create different presentations, right? I don't change the name usually.
Oh.
Just give me a minute. I'll tell you. I'll show you. I was kept somewhere. Because these are the things which are useful when I'm giving agile training also. Sometimes it has, yeah, let me explain the business architecture, and this is a business architecture. Yeah, I can explain. Yeah, right. So this can be one, right? So one is about, see, enterprise architecture. If you would like to know about enterprise architecture, so these are the 4 things you should understand. Means business analyst team in connect to the technical team should understand this well in advance. The first thing is business architecture. One should understand. Second, application architecture, systems architecture, and data architecture. These are the 4 different things you should understand. If you want to understand an enterprise architecture, you should understand 4 points. One is business architecture. Second, application. Third, technology or systems architecture, and data architecture. 4 points. Now, what business architecture consists of? What is meant by business architecture? Because knowing about business architecture is essentially required for a BA, not application, systems, or data, because these are all something relating to the technicalities. Now, if you want to understand the business architecture, these are the things which are involved in business architecture. So, business architecture, knowing about the business architecture of a particular organization should be known. So, the first thing is that you should understand about who are the customers, partners, followed by the competitors of the existing business. First point. Nature of the business should be known to us well in advance first. Nature of the business is required. Next, who are the customers, partners, and as well as the competitors for this existing business should be known to you well in advance. Point number 1. Point number 2, what are the capabilities? Capabilities in terms of the business capability I am talking about. What are all the business capabilities of that existing organization should be known to us well in advance. This is what we call it as capability. Capability, you can understand this as a business capability. Capability means business capability is what you have to understand. Next, you should be knowing about the policies, rules, and regulations of the business. Whichever the business are you dealing with, you should be knowing about the kind of policies are they following, the kind of rules and regulations what this organization has. Next, you must be knowing about the vision, strategies, and tactics. This point I was already mentioned some time back to you. Next, we must be knowing about the kind of products and services. As I told you, nature of the business must be known to us well in advance. At the same time, you must be knowing about the kind of value stream management process. What is that they are following in order to make their quality of the services much better in future? Because this is where we call it as value stream process or management is. Value stream process or management, majorly focusing on providing a value addition of the services one by one, right? So over a period of time, which must be a continuous effort, which an organization has to sustain. Then only stability as well as long lasting of the organization in the market is possible. Otherwise, they'll be out of the race soon. So this is important. Next, what kind of initiatives and as well as the projects are they dealing? That is important. Followed by this, what are the metrics and as well as measurings do they follow in order to make their services quality better? This is all, please do remember, from the architectural point of view of a business, functional perspective, not the technical perspective, right? At the same time, what are the decisions and as well as the events and when they have taken all that. So business architecture majorly explains you about the functional aspect of the business, right from the capabilities, their business capabilities I'm talking about, the kind of lines of the products and services they were belongs to, the kind of vision strategies followed by the tactics do they follow, are they following now, followed by the kind of policies and procedures what they are following at this point in time. So all these things comes under business architecture. Being a BA, one should be very clear with. Means if you'd like to know about enterprise architecture, first of all, we must be knowing about business architecture for sure. So once you know about the business architecture, the next thing is about application architecture. Application architecture means what are the different applications an organization is using. This application, whatever you are developing, these applications are not standalone. Please do remember. Okay. For example, if you take a point of sale system, assume that POS is a hardware device, but end of the day, POS application will be installed in it. Even though the application, whatever they are following as you call POS application, is not a standalone application. Standalone means it is not individual on its nature. It is being connected with multiple applications, multiple systems, multiple applications are connecting to this. That is where generally organization flow process happens. So this is where you need to understand application architecture means what are the different applications an organization is using and how these applications were interconnected. Right? Because all these applications will have an interconnectivity. Then only the structure of the process as well as the hierarchy of the departments, everything will be connected in this way because everything is penetrated towards IT nowadays. If it's a solution, obviously it's a technical solution. That is how the transformation happened because everything is technology now. Whatever the solution you are thinking from the technical perspective. Across the world, irrespective of the domain we are belongs to, right? So application architecture should be known by a technical people because what kind of applications are we using? If you take ours as an example, point of sale system is an example of an application you see. This application is being interconnected with multiple things, right? So there is an inventory system which is connecting to this. Again, this inventory management system being influenced as well as the success depends on the kind of supply chain process and effectiveness which organization follows. At the same time, this point of sale system is even connecting with payroll of the employees. Their ID numbers and all, everything is being accessed to this. At the same time, even this is being used even for report generation about the kind of sales reports, performance, which product is moving fast, right? All these things should be known. So application architecture is majorly focusing on the kind of applications we are using and how these applications were interconnected. This is where generally application architecture come into existence. The next thing is that systems architecture or technology, whatever it is, systems architecture we call it as. Means what kind of systems are we using? Means either it could be a configuration based or whatever it is, right? So whatever the systems are we using, configured systems, what kind of systems, what are the performances, as well as the configuration of the systems are they using? Again, the systems architecture or the systems they are using, again, depends on the kind of regulatory regulations, what that respective domain consists of. Because if you take healthcare or banking and all, there are some regulatory standards they have to follow and obey with when they are performing their business activity. This regulatory board, because government will have a regulatory board, based on that, their infrastructure should be set up in that way. Then only that has a validity and acceptance. Otherwise, no. Right. So because everywhere there is a regulatory board, right? Even for insurance, banking, healthcare, everywhere there is a regulatory board will be formed by the government to make not to do any kind of mismanagement in the business. Right. So that well. Right. So technical systems architecture, nothing but what kind of systems they are using, because when you talk about the systems, again, these points also comes into account. Because the systems must be encrypted systems that should not be accessed by anyone. So what kind of servers they want to use, how to build a server, even to construct a server and all, there are some guidelines which that book will be taken into account, right? So based upon their rules and regulations and all, you have to construct the network of the application or the systems, whatever are we managing. So this is all comes under systems architecture. Next, fourth one, we call it as data architecture. Data architecture means whatever and how this data we have extracted and how this data will be stored. Database designing, right? So how the database design was done, how the data is being extracted from the different structural or unstructural sources, and how are we storing the data, how are we extracting the data. If you want to extract the data, how this database designing should happen. Tables and all, right? Database tables and all, everything will be prepared by the database team. So how you are structuring the data, how you are storing the data, how you are extracting it, right? So how this data is being stored, right? So what precautions an organization is taking to stable this. All these things comes under data architecture. So understanding about business, application, systems and data architecture, all these combinations are considered as enterprise architecture. Generally, to define this enterprise architecture, of course, there are different frameworks in IT we use. You might have heard about TOGAF. I think, I'm not sure, but usually there are different frameworks. TOGAF, Jackman, right? So different frameworks uses, of course. That's not required for you, but to have a technical knowledge over, I'm just explaining these terminologies to you. TOGAF means Open Group Framework. The Open Group Framework is what we call as TOGAF framework. Jackman, right? So different frameworks people uses. So this is where generally enterprise architecture. So knowing about enterprise architecture is essentially important for a BA team. In combination to the technical team I'm talking about, but major our focus is the business level, business architecture level, not from the systems application or data level. So that sort of understanding and those inputs has to be taken apart from assessing the existing and proposed and all everything to assess the capability gaps. Is it clear to everyone? Any questions on this regard? Abhishek, Archita, ANJ, Janaki Raman, Manoj, Meena, Nanak, Parth Sardi, Kiran, Satish, Savita, Sophia, Swati, Vivek. Clear? Do you have any questions on this regard in referring to assessing the capability gaps?
No, sir.
So, sir, here in task 2, enterprise architecture is what we saw, which was broken down into these 4 sections. Business need is something coming in as an output from the first task. This is defining business need. Now, the solution performance assessment. So here itself, you are designing solution as well, or what is this? The second input, which are saying solution performance assessment.
Second point is to assess the capability gaps. Assess the capability gaps means whatever the gaps you require to fill by understanding the existing process. To understand capability gaps come into picture.
Got it. So the existing capabilities along with what are the limitations along with it, that is under the second umbrella, which is solution performance assessment.
Sorry.
The second pointer, solution performance assessment, is coming in from the current existing systems gap,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Constraints.
Because this is all part of analysis. Please do remember, here we don't come to a conclusion. Because
True.
conclusion, we don't come here. Conclusion, we come once you define the business case, then you will come to a conclusion. Till the time, we don't come to a conclusion. We are in a state of assessing the possibilities of developing solution and how best to be developed. So for that, what kind of information do we require to carry and to understand? So this is all something relating to that. Do you understand this? Right?
Yeah, got it.
Right. So this is what the second point, which is called assessing capability gaps.
Sir, if we
This is
refresh
where generally gap analysis will come into picture. Gap analysis. Gap analysis. Yeah, you go ahead.
sir, if we rephrase it, like we can say, like it is a limitation of an existing as a system. In one line, if we say this, can we put it in this way? A limitation of an as a system, of an existing as a system. Could we say that?
Sorry, can you come again?
Like if we rephrase it in a simple manner, like can we say that it is a limitation of an existing as a system?
You can call that way, but it's not a limitation 100%. Because limitations to an extent, but end of the day, that has to be implemented, right? Limitations, identifying the limitations are not only enough. Because assessing this to develop a new solution. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So it will not be ended with limitations. It is not ended with limitations. Limitations means where you got the confirmation, but confirmation is not only the one we require. You need to have more. This must be leads to the solution. What is that you are about to develop in future? That's what the understanding you need to have, right? Limitation you can consider, but the limitation means the existing system, what you understand, and when you are comparing, you will trying to understand about the limitations, but limitations itself is not only the one you require. And how to transform is what we do under gap analysis. Do you understand this, Manoj?
Understood. Yeah.
So to do gap analysis, of course, there is a format. Of course, this format I'll be sharing to you also. Whoever has time, you can do it, because not mandatory for everyone. There is a gap analysis document. Of course, I'm not giving you the detailed gap analysis document because there are a lot of points are involved in it. I'm giving you a high level understanding. This template, of course, I'll be forwarding. Whoever has a time and to do this, you can do it later. Okay, not needed. Right? Not mandatory for you. Right. So gap analysis template will be like this, because based on the assessment you had, okay, based on the analysis and the interaction and the confirmation you had, this is what and how generally a gap analysis template will be. Of course, I am not reading all the points because this is there in the document. It doesn't looks nice, but still high level points I'll explain to you. Whatever the related documents relating to gap analysis, because there are a lot of documents we receive from the people, because through interaction, we'll get to know many things through observation. Apart from that, exchanging of documents is also needed, because everything should have some point should have a documental evidences. So related documents must be mentioned here, followed by whoever is giving those documents, all that. At the same time, whatever the changes we are identifying, because it depends on version to version. For example, there is version 1.0 was there in the customer location, where you are changing this to the next level, 2.0. Please do remember that we are not changing the whole structure, right? We are doing the changes based on the limitations you are identified in the existing one. But end of the day, is it to be integrated, the new ones to the existing one, or to develop a new application? Again, it's a choice of the technical team and as well as the project sponsor, because to develop the new application right from the scratch, what is that cost is involved and what infrastructure do we need to change, or to repair the existing one, right? Repairing the existing one, this one, or to develop a new application right from the scratch. End of the day, that is in the territory of the project sponsor to accept, because it is been connecting with some budget, even infrastructure, changes of infrastructure, which was proposed by the client team, vendor team, right, technical team. So here you need to understand the change records, whatever the changes you want to make and all everything, those changes initially, please do remember, this is not change management. Change management comes next. Okay, change management, once the project has started, whatever the changes were happening, that comes under there. Okay, change management comes there. Here we are identifying the gap analysis, that's it. Whatever the gaps you have identified, the changes and all, everything will be mentioned here. At the same time, whatever we have revised, the description has to be mentioned here as well. And the next time, whatever the related documents, if you have received any, right? So those people information has to be updated here equally. Means you need to write down the name of the document, who has been contributed, and what role that respective individual is playing. Because depends on the role and all, whatever the information are they going to provide will vary. So that has to be taken into an account. At the same time, there must be some approval, document approval has to be made by someone, followed by the kind of role they were playing. That information has to be updated here, because this is not the conclusion we have made across the table, which is an oral format. That should be in a documented format. Maybe for the future references and all, we do the same thing you do under the JAT session. There is a scribe. Scribe has documented all the information, right? What are the conclusions we have made? So everything is the documented format. You know, I don't need to explain more detail. So everything is documented. End of the day, whatever the conclusions we have made must be documented. So documental approval is also required. After document approvals and all that, here you need to mention the objectives, right? So objectives and as well as purpose of developing this document, right? Identifying the objectives and purpose of developing this document. At the same time, who is going to view this document, we need to identify. At the same time, you need to understand about the kind of gaps, what is that you are understanding from current to proposed or current to future system, whatever it is. Those objectives as well as the purposes has to be mentioned here. Followed by this, you need to write in the overview of the project, right? So project overview followed by the outlines objective. Outlines means the high level objectives, what we have identified based on the interaction we had with multiple stakeholders. That overview has to be mentioned here equally. Next, we need to update the current environment. Whatever the current environment or the technology or the process which people were using at this level. This is what we call it as current environment. Next, after current environment, you need to describe the methodology. Methodology means method of using to create this document. In what way are you doing it? Are you preparing on your own? Are you doing some research out of it? In what way? Are you going to conduct any workshops? That is what we have did in last session, if you remember, right? Those points will be taken into account here, because whatever the documental evidences or the information which was mentioned and as well as prepared by the scribe, of course, Miss Sophia has played that role, right? So those informations will also be taken into an account here. At the same time, of course, there are some one-on-one interviews will be made with some people. So these are all the methodologies. These are all the research methodology, I can say, right? So these methodologies, what are the methodologies are we following to understand this gap analysis? That should be mentioned here. Along with that, we need to mention the scope as well. Whatever the high-level components of the project, the scope information should also be mentioned here equally. At the same time, these are the matrix definitions, something like current processed and all that, right? So resolutions and all. So this information has to be written on our own, right? What are the definitions we have understood so far? And last but not least, these are the important things. Gap analysis resolution matrix, where we have to provide some reference number. And what exactly the topic are we going to discuss with? And what was the priority? Because gap analysis is not only to identify, end of the day, you have to make a priority for each and every functionality. For example, there were 100 functionalities you are developing. Every development functionality, you have to mention the priority that there, priority. Because is it a high-end priority or intermediate or low-level priority? That priority, based on that, implementation will be taken place. So priority is also another important. This is used when we are implementing the project, not now. Okay, whenever we are writing the functionalities and all, priorities has to be identified. Next, we need to understand the current and proposed. What was the current process and what exactly it has to be. That is what in the beginning screen I have shown you, right? Current and proposed. And what gap you have identified. What was that exact gap and how you are going to resolve it. Whatever the resolution are you going to make out of it. So this gap may be anything. Type of gap may be anything, right? It could be a functional gap, as I mentioned earlier. This could be a non-functional gap. This could be a gap, something relating to the security aspects of the application, whatever it is. So that information has to be updated here under this gap analysis and resolution matrix. And this is all the document which is for the reference purpose. Please do remember, whatever the documents are we preparing, or these are the documents which are for the reference purpose for the team to follow. Right? Because everything cannot be explained orally, right? So that's not possible either, because there are a lot of functionalities and processes are involved. That's not possible even, you know that. Next, followed by this, what are the follow-up and action items are we taking? That information has to be mentioned. Followed by the terminologies, acronyms of that respective glossary, because this is to make understand people well, right? So for that reason, generally this glossary terms and all that, you know, because whenever we buy a book, usually, you know, the back of it, you will be knowing about the terminologies, everything will be written. Even whenever we are preparing some thesis or some paper we are publishing, we write down the glossaries, right? So the glossary of information should also be mentioned here accordingly. So this is what generally the gap analysis template, which normally we have to prepare. So based on the conclusions, whatever we have made so far, this is what generally gap analysis is what we have to do. This is all comes under the second point, which is called assessing the capability gaps by considering the enterprise architecture event. Clear? Is it clear, Abhishek? Hey, Jachian, Janakiraman, Manoj, everyone. Meena, everyone. Clear? Understand this? Right. So this is what generally we call it as gap analysis. Assessing the gap analysis is what we have to do. Next, you need to determine the solution approach. Please do remember, here you are not providing a solution, but you need to determine the solution approach. What solutions are we going to consider? And what are the solutions you need to understand? And how the solution has to be given? Means what is that approach are you going to follow? That has to be done under the third phase under enterprise analysis. So for that, you have to take whatever the inputs earlier we have taken, that will be carried. Okay, inputs are common because that require capabilities, business needs, all these things will be taken into account. Hence, I am not explaining that point, because whatever the earlier decisions and the conclusions we have made, that will be carried to the next task. Okay, third task or fourth or fifth, whatever it is. So that will be anyway, it will be carried automatically. So here you need to determine the solution approach. Whatever the solution are you going to provide, and what is that approach are you going to follow to determine the solution? What is that you have identified so far? Because at this stage, normally we come to know some clarity on the solution. Actually, in this enterprise analysis, when you are defining the business need, you come to know what could be the probable solution and all everything. We come to know, but we don't get the clarity, means we don't get the official confirmation unless you're going for solution assessment validation. There you'll confirm it, right? From there, implementation will be taken place. Till the time we don't give the actual confirmation of it, the possibilities and all everything, and official validation will be done. at the solution assessment and validation. In the last knowledge area, we do the validation. We do the validation and we confirm it officially. Yes, this is what the solution and these are the requirements. These are the features. These are the functionalities to be developed. From there, whatever the implementation team, right, technical team, whether they are writing coding, testing, right, everything will be taken care of by from there onwards, right? Because prior to that, whatever the activities will be performed is by the BA. That is what are we learning now, right? So that is what our course is meant for. So this is where generally determine the solution approach come into picture. So once you have determined the solution approach, you need to define the solution scope. So I need not explain because I think I have explained this earlier also, right? What are the assumptions? What kind of constraints do we have to consider? All these things you need to define the solution scope here. These are the inputs to be taken. If you want to define a solution scope, you need to understand the need of the business. You need to understand the required capability gaps. Solution approach has to be identified and understood. At the same time, you need to understand the assumptions, the constraints, because this is where some time back we have discussed, right? Limitations, right? So challenges, constraints, what are the assumptions should we keep into an account to develop the solution? All these things we have to define here. This is where generally defining solution scope come into picture. Last but not least, you need to define the business case. This is what you have to do. If you want to define the business case, there are some points we have to consider. Those points are as follows. I'm writing down the points to define the business case here. Okay. Points to consider to define the business case are as follows. Okay. That's what I'm writing here. What are the points to be considered to define the business case is what we are discussing now. I'm writing here. Points to consider to define the business case as follows, right? Define the business case as follows. The first point, you need to understand the current business situation. You need to understand the current business situation. Point number one. So what was the current business situation? Based on the final conclusion, based on the tasks, whatever we have studied so far, right? Business need, assessing the capability gaps, determining the solution approach, solution scope, all that. Based on that, defining the business case is what being a BA team has to perform. So to do that, generally they have to consider these points as well. The first thing is that they have to identify and define the current business situation. Second point, based on the research we have made so far. Okay. Next, you need to list out the problems, list of problems. What is that we have identified? Next, third point is that importance of addressing the problem, which is nothing but need, right? So this is what it is. Next, we have to identify the scope even, right? So scope identification is also required because if you remember in the beginning classes, I have told you, right? So scope of the project, all that, right? So I have mentioned it. Scope must be known to us well in advance. What is the possible scope do we have? So unless until if you have not identified scope of the project will not be successful. Because whatever the challenges we'll be facing in future, how to come across, how to face those. If you don't have any clear agenda on that, then it leads to scope creep. Should not happen anytime. So scope of the project has to be identified here. Next, we need to know about beneficiaries. Right? So beneficiaries should also be known to us well in advance. Who are the beneficiaries here? Who is going to benefit out of it? Means your beneficiary is nothing but, normally I can say these are the users. Users are nothing but the beneficiaries here. So who are going to benefit out of this are nothing but we call it as beneficiaries here. So beneficiaries has to be mentioned here. Next, sixth, alternatives to address the problem. Alternatives to address the problem. Are there any alternatives you have identified to address the problem or not? If yes, what are those alternatives and how you are going to address this point, right? This is where generally alternatives to address the problem come into picture. Next, you need to understand the dependent factors, dependencies. Okay, this is also required. What are all the dependent factors to develop a solution? Okay, and it's a continuous word, right? Dependence factors to develop a solution, right? So I think that point I'm missing here, right? Dependent factors to develop a solution is what comes in the seventh point. Next, eighth point. What are the facts and assumptions to provide solution? We have to consider what are the facts and assumptions to provide a solution to consider with. So that point should also be known. So these are the points one should know when you are going to define the business case. Means if you want to define a business case for any of the project, so first you need to understand the current business situation. You need to understand the problems which were there in it. Next, you need to know about the importance of addressing the problem. Followed by this, you must be knowing about the scope, followed by the beneficiaries. Next, we must be knowing about alternatives to address the problem. What are the different alternatives do we have here? If any, okay, if any, because in the sometime back, I have told you even this, because solution may not be one, right? So there are a couple of solutions will be observed and finally conclusion will be made later, right? So this is all alternatives to address the problem. And what are the dependent factors? What are the dependent factors and all that? Next, what factors and assumptions to provide solution, followed by this. Who is the client, customer, all that, right? So this information is what we need to consider when you are going to define a business case for any of the problem. Is it clear, right? So this is what comes under enterprise analysis. Is it clear, or any questions on this regard? Is there anything you'd like to ask? Anyone? Anything you'd like to ask in this regard, right? So this is what comes under enterprise analysis. So you need to define the business need. You need to assess the capability gaps. You need to determine the solution approach. You need to define the solution scope. You need to define the business case. Means if you want to define a business case, there are some points we have to consider. Those points as follows. As I mentioned you, those points as follows. Those points you need to consider. Now, when you are preparing a format of business case format, usually this business case format varies from organization to organization, because as I told you, there are a lot of templates we use in real environment. The business case formats may vary slightly, but end of the day, the theme of the business case format remains constant. And what points are they including in it? Which are that they are ignoring and making it for the another one? That varies from person to person, it will vary. So when you talk about business case format and all, these points has to be considered. The first thing is that what problem are we going to solve and what was the opportunity? Business opportunity is what the first point should be considered when we are preparing a business case format. Point number one. What was the problem we are trying to solve and what is the business opportunity? Because end of the day, if there is no opportunity we have reached, right? There is no value for the business solution you are providing. So the business opportunity must be evident and it has to be established. That is point number one. Second, how can we address the problem or take advantages of the business opportunity, right? So how are we going to address the problem? and how are you going to take advantage of the opportunity to perform it, because this is a solution end of the day, right? So problem is one, second is the solution. Now the third one is an approach. What is an approach? What are the viable options available to implement the solution? This is where sometime back when I am defining the business case points, these points I was mentioned there, please recollect those two, right? So compare that so that you'll be understood well in advance. This is an approach, right? Approach has to be followed here. Next, whenever you are doing this, there are some practical difficulties we may be facing. This is in a form of risk assessment. Risk has to be mentioned. Of course, to do risk analysis and all, what are the aspects to be taken? I'll take risk analysis as separate. Okay, I'm not, because it leads to deviation. Hence, I'm not talking about risk much. Okay, I'm just explaining this point. That's it. I'm not talking about risk assessment, risk identification, right? Risk minimization, right? There are some steps we follow to do risk analysis that I'm not explaining here. Okay, point to be noted. That I will be explaining as a separate, because it unnecessarily deviates our topic. Hence, I'm not going to that extent. Okay, underline this. So risk assessment has to be made. What are the risks which are involved in it, and how to minimize this risk? What resolution strategy are we making? This risk may be anything, because in the beginning of the class, I think one gentleman has asked me, forgotten his name. Yeah, he has asked me about that. Right? So there are different types of risks which are involved in it. Based on that, risk assessment, risk resolution strategies and all, everything has to be made. Followed by this, what business value is generated from these options, because end of the day, there is no business value of the one you are going to provide, there will be no value for the solution. This is where generally end of the day management team see, because if you remember yesterday, the first point, whatever I was mentioned is that management has put in some investment on this. They expect some ROI out of it. ROI stands for return of investment. Return of investment in terms of the business value, right? Return of investment need not be financials all the time. Value of the business will also give you business, right? So value of the business increment, increasing the value of the business is required. So these points we have to consider when we are preparing a business case by any of the business analyst team under enterprise analysis. So once, if you want to define the business case, whatever the study and whatever the points I was mentioned you so far about all these points, need, capability gaps, determine the solution approach, scope, all these things has to be studied here. This is what we call it as enterprise analysis. Clear? So this knowledge area was done so far. Next knowledge area is what we call it as requirement and life cycle management, right? This is what generally we are about to discuss about requirement life cycle management. Before I'm going into requirement life cycle management, I want to discuss about 2 points. One is about how to classify the requirements. From here onwards, we are going to requirements. Okay, please do remember. So in the state of enterprise analysis, we are understanding about the structure of the whole business, functional perspective. Okay, business analysis always talks about the functional perspective, because if you see closely, I have never discussed about anything relating to the technicalities of the project, right? Nothing was discussed, because design levels and all everything we have already discussed in the JAT session, and being a team who are involved in it, they get a clarity, right, about the design part, what they're expecting, all that. And whatever we do under enterprise analysis, completely about the enterprise and structure of the business, capability gaps, needs, all that. Now, from here onwards, slowly we will be transforming to the requirements, right? Slowly in this stage, usually whenever you define a business case, you come to a conclusion about the solution. Okay, this is what the solution we are about to develop. This is what the solution was the right one. This is where generally the conclusion we get from here, right? This is where generally in this enterprise analysis, once we have completed this enterprise analysis, we come to a conclusion. We are about to come to a conclusion and it's almost closed. It's almost confirmed. This is what generally we do under enterprise analysis. Now, from here onwards, we have to go to requirement lifecycle management. Means how to trace the requirements, how to manage the requirements. All these things will be discussed under requirement lifecycle management. This is what generally we need to know next. But before we are getting into requirement lifecycle management, there are few points I must tell you. One is about classification of requirements. I'm texting in the chat box, okay? Classification of requirements, I have to discuss with you. Next, I have to discuss about the business analysis techniques. Business analysis techniques, okay? These are the 2 points I have to discuss. Now, let's go back to classification of requirements. Classification of requirements are as follows. Usually requirements classification, as in when we are interacting with multiple stakeholders and all, requirements classification will be as follows. Because whenever I start requirement lifecycle management, I can't explain all that. Hence, I am explaining now here. So the first one we call it as business requirements. Because this, if you remember in the beginning, when I explained about the activities of a BA, I have explained this point. I am repeating again for some time. Business requirements majorly focusing on business goal, vision, strategy, tactics, all that. This is all from the business requirements where you are gathering from the project sponsor. This is point number 1. Second point is that stakeholder or end user requirements. Stakeholder or end user requirements. Whoever the stakeholder we have or the end users, what are they expecting, right? So what is that they are expecting comes under stakeholder or end user requirements, right? Because whoever is using the application, they have their own requirements based upon the practical difficulty, what is that they are facing while they are using the application. This is all comes under stakeholder or end user requirements. The third thing we call it as transitional requirements. Transitional requirements. So these transitional requirements, when you get a clarity, when you perform gap analysis, you get this, right? Because there is an interconnect among all these. Okay, please consider that. Please understand this point. So why do you, when you get this transitional requirements come into picture, when you have performed gap analysis, when you have identified that assessing the capability gaps, these transitional requirements, you get a clarity out of it, right? This is what we call it as transitional requirements stands for. Transitional requirements means connecting from as is to be. It is very simple for you. How you are transforming from there to here is what we call it as transitional requirements. Next is solution requirements. Next is solution requirements. Solution requirements means what features are you going to develop, what functionalities are you developing it, what are functional and non-functional requirements of the application. Functionalities I have shown earlier. Non-functionalities means performance of the application, characteristic of a particular application called non-functional. Performance, scalability, security, load balancing. How should it perform? How should it behave? That particular functionality. All these things will be comes under non-functional requirements. So in the solution requirements, we will be writing down the features. These features will be categorized into functional and non-functional. Here, this is the traditional model. This is how it happens. When you are comparing this with Agile, in Agile, we don't have any functional and non-functional requirements as separate. Whatever the requirement, that requirement will be written in a form of user story. Right? So that requirement will be a form of user story. It is in the form of a user story. Right? So we are writing down in a form of user stories. The major difference you see from traditional model to an Agile model is this. In traditional model, you have documents, you have functional requirements, you have non-functional requirements. Above than that, you have features, all that. But whereas in if you see, whereas in agile environment and all, in spite of all that, we write user stories. So that too, this user stories to write, normally we write it formally, usually whenever we train people and all, we ask people to write it on the Word document first. Okay, Word document, frame it and restructure all that. Then next, we will write down these user stories and all everything in a tool called Jira, because there is a tool prominently we use called Jira tool. In that Jira tool, their epics and user stories has to write. This will be written by a business analyst. At the same time, business analyst turned product owner. Also, you can also consider that way. People, whoever is transforming themselves from a business analyst to a product owner, they will write down the what you call that. They'll write down the epics and user stories and all. And how to write epics user stories for this particular case study, what is that I have taken? That I will show you as separate, because I will anyway, I have shown in the beginning day, I think on a high level note. I have not shown you practically. From here onwards, you will be knowing it. I'll create how to create a project in Jira. I will show you, and how to write epics and how to write user stories for the project. Okay, that I will explain that later. So this is how generally the solution requirements come into picture. Next is regulatory requirements. Right, so regulatory requirements, nothing to explain much. You know that, right? What is regulatory stands for? Policies, procedures, all these things comes under regulatory requirements. So these are the classification of requirements which, being a BA, one should be good and familiar with, right? This is how generally classification of requirements are. Is it clear to everyone? Clear? Meena, Manoj, everyone, Abhishek, Kiran. Right, so these are all the different type of requirements we have. Now, after that, we are going to discuss about the techniques of PA. What are the different techniques a business analyst uses, and how and why these techniques being used and how these are being used. That I'll be discussing after 10 minutes. Right, we are taking a break of 10 minutes now from here onwards. After 10 minutes of the break, I'm going to discuss about the techniques of PA. Followed by this, we'll go to requirement lifecycle management. Is it clear? Any questions on this regard? Please go ahead. Kiran, Abhishek.
For transitional requirement, can you just elaborate one more? As in, my understanding is business requirement, you said from business sides requirements coming in. Stakeholders, it might be different stakeholders might be sharing their different requirements. Solution requirements and transitional. What's the difference between these two?
Solution requirements means what features and functionalities end of the day you have identified is called solution. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So before the transitional requirements means whatever the final outcome of the gap analysis is called transition. Simple.
Okay.
That's the reason gap analysis we have done, right? Transition, Abhishek. It is very simple. Transition means from existing to proposed. Simple.
Okay.
The detailed
the
form of the transition is nothing but solution. That's only.
Got it. So multiple
Detail.
iterations we are doing will be termed as transitional and
Yes.
final solution.
Yes.
Makes
Fine.
sense.
Right. That's how it is. Right. So this is all about it. And there are some techniques, even being a BA we use, that I'll be explaining after 10 minutes of the break. Okay. Okay then. Right, guys. We'll meet after 10 minutes. It's a break time now. Okay then. Bye.
failed
Right. Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. So what we have discussed before the break is about the type of requirements we have. And now I'm going to explain you about the techniques of business analysis, because being a business analyst, whenever you want to collect the requirements, or if you want to manage your requirements or to identify the solution for a better decision making, there are some techniques normally being a BA we follow. Please do remember, these are the techniques not only for IT BA, even for these are the techniques which are useful even for non-IT also. Even for non-IT also, these techniques are useful for us. These techniques clearly explains us about the different factors. What are the different factors which is influencing the decision of the business? What is that we are taking? So it will not be the same all the time, because there are different techniques which normally we follow. There are different techniques which normally we follow. By considering different factors, right? So there could be some external factors will be there. There could be some internal factors. There could be some factors which are focusing more on the changes of the business and so on, right? So different factors are involved in it. So the factors among all that, when you talk about business analysis techniques, there are different techniques we follow. The first technique is called pestle technique. Okay. Pestle is a kind of technique which is being used in business analysis. So this pestle technique is the one which will be used to identify the impact of the external factors. Because if you'd like to identify the external factors and as well as how those external factors are impacting us, this pestle technique is being used for. Pestle technique is the one which is used to identify the external factors, impact of the external factors, how it is impacting us. So whereas this full form of pestle as follows: P stands for political factors, right? Political factors is the first one. Political factors is the first one. Means decisions. Political factors means the kind of policies as well as the decisions what in political through this political system, means through the governments and all that, right? Whatever the decisions are they taking, those are comes under the first one. P stands for political factors is the first one under business analysis techniques, which normally we follow. Political factors. This is an external factor. Okay, please do remember, pestle is for external factors to identify. After political factors, next is E stands for economical factors. Economic conditions or maybe inflation. All these things will also be influenced in the decisions of BA, what is that we are taking, which is driving towards the solution. Because end of the day, it is all driving towards the solution it is. So driving towards the solution, whatever the factors are we considering from the external point of view is what I'm explaining here. So political factors on the context of the decisions, political decisions and as well as policies. Second, economical factors, whatever the inflation or the value of the currency or the inflation, or else the economic policies of that respective area or the geographical location. So this is also another external factor. At the same time, social factors, culture, values, traditions, ethnicity, right? All these things comes under social factors, because social factor is also considered as an external factor here. Next, T stands for technical factors or technology, I can say, right? Technology or a technical factor will also be considered as an external factor here. Whatever the technology or technical factors, this is all comes under external factor. Next, L stands for legal factors, whatever the legal conditions which are abided with. Because when you are developing applications and all, you need to know about the rules and regulations, especially which is referring to the banking applications or healthcare application. These are all majorly, I can say. I don't say that remaining other domains doesn't require it, but insurance, banking, financial services, as well as healthcare and all that. So it depends on the geographical location, as well as the kind of policies which was introduced by the respective governments and all that. So those are all legal provisions and all abided with, right? So those are all comes under legal factors, which is also should be considered. Apart from that, environmental factors. Environmental factors need not be a nature or an environment, right? Environmental factors in and around us, I can say. In that context also, you can understand. Environment need not be a nature all the time, right? So these are the different factors we'll be taking into an account as a part of external. And as how is this impacting our decision, business decision, working towards business solutions and all, is comes under the first one, which is called PESTEL. Again, here I would like to mention one more point. When we talk about PESTEL, when we want to identify the external factors need not be all these, because all these need not be come into reality. Sometimes maybe political, technical, maybe legal factors, and as well as economical factors might be the considerable points, right? Remaining things may not be. For example, social points. Social points are not considerable there, because when you're developing a solution, this cultures, values, and traditions, it has nothing to do with that particular solution. Maybe what are the solution are you going to provide? That may not be relevant. I'm talking about not considerable means may not be relevant, so that we don't take it into account. Environmental factors that may not be considerable there, that may not be required. Even political factors may not be required, but economical factors, of course, because economic will and as well as political factors may have a connect. Sometimes the kind of decisions or the stabilities, all that into consideration. So when you talk about external factors, just doesn't mean that we are using PESTEL, doesn't mean we use everything, because if it is relevant, those points will be taking into an account. That's what the context you have to understand. It doesn't mean that everything will be included in it. Doesn't mean it. Okay. Point to be noted. This is what we call it as PESTEL. This is one kind of technique. Being a BA we use, and I would like to remind and extend you one more point. This is not something relating for IT. Even in non-IT organizations, even in banks or financial institutions, whoever is working as a BA, it is applicable for everyone, right? So even what are the business decisions and all, these are the factors are influencing their decisions, or they have to keep these points into an account when they are making decisions out of it, right? This is point number one. Second technique called SWOT analysis. You know about SWOT, most of the people here. What is SWOT analysis stands for? SWOT analysis is nothing but self-assessment. Assessing anyone or assessing a group, either it assessing an organization, or before you are taking a decision, assessing the situation as well as the environment we were. To do that, generally SWOT analysis is being used. So SWOT analysis is a common technique used everywhere, even in our personal lives also we use this, right? So whenever you are going for an interview, or whenever you're planning for an interview, or whenever you are planning for your career transition and all, SWOT analysis will you be made by the BA, made by the person. may not be knowing as it called SWOT analysis, because some people may not be knowing that's called SWOT. But end of the day, what is that they are assessing themselves is nothing but SWOT analysis. Maybe by ignorance, few people maybe, right? So SWOT analysis, nothing but strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat, right? This is what generally SWOT analysis is. Means now here is a question, Raj, in what way this SWOT analysis is being used by the BA in the projects, right? So because our end of the day, we have to be landed in the BA role. That's where the importance is, right? It is required. So whenever you are endorsing some work to people, right? So whenever you are assigning a job to the team members, you have to see their capacity, technical capacity, as well as the discipline in terms of the timelines, as well as the kind of stress they can be controlled while they are taking up for completing the task. All these things has to be considered when we are allotting some thing to the people. So on that context, SWOT analysis is being used. Means because when you are endorsing or when you are assigning some task to someone, or whenever you are taking decisions and all, especially this SWOT analysis is being majorly used in the product development. Because whenever we want to develop a product, initially to start with this market research and all that, this SWOT analysis will be made by them, right? So strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. That's what generally they do. Using this SWOT analysis, they will be knowing about what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their opportunities and threat. Because this is all you are transforming from present to future. Because strength and weakness are the present tense, which an existing individual or an organization has. That's what we call it as strength and weakness, which is now, which is existed, which is a existing one. Opportunity and threat are the new thing, are the future tense. Means what is that you are going to get benefit out of this in future, and what are the possible threats we have, how to overcome those threats, how to grab and utilize the opportunity. This is how generally that transformation is. So whenever we teach SWOT analysis, this is what we teach. SWOT analysis is nothing but a journey of transforming from an existing to future. Need not be a system also. Even in this is to assess anyone's individual performances, how they are and where they are capable of, and how to transform themselves. So for that, even also we teach that, right? SWOT analysis we teach. Technique of SWOT analysis is being applicable there, right? Transforming from an existing to future state. Existing state to future state is called SWOT analysis. So the transformation journey, how to evaluate yourself and how to correct yourself. The same thing applicable everywhere. So SWOT analysis is a common underlying technique throughout the role of a BA. Almost in all the stages of BA role, we use this. Some things knowingly, somewhere unknowingly. Need not be all the things. At least one or two in these points will be used. Professionally, you guys know that what I'm trying to say, right? Because everywhere we use all these. So this is the second technique. This is all for self-assessment and all. This is the second one. The third technique is called MOST, M-O-S-T, right? MOST technique. MOST is a kind of technique which is used to identify the internal factors. Because as I've told you, PESTEL is a technique for external factors, to know about the external factors, external conditions, all that. But whereas when you talk about MOST is an internal factors, to assess the impact of the internal factors and all, MOST technique is being used. So whereas M stands for mission statement, okay? In simple terms, I can say mission statement. Next, objectives. Objectives is the second one. Strategies and tactics. Strategies and tactics. Mission, objectives, strategies and tactics. So MOST technique is the one which is being used to identify the internal factors. Because if you are developing some project, because you could ask me, Raj, in what way this is being used in application development? This can be used in two different ways. Either this can be seen from the context of the customer or an end user, right? Whoever is the client, you can use this from their context. At the same time, when you are going to develop a product, because this most technique can be used in development, when you are developing a product, for example, right? Let's say, for example, we are going to develop a cloud-based point of sale system for the benefit of the retail store owners. Assume that it's a product. Okay, we are not targeting this only for one customer. Based upon the market research what we have identified there is a need of developing some XYZ kind of application, cloud related one. So hence, this is what the decision we have taken based on the market research. Assume that in that context, if you are talking about product development, first of all, we have to analyze ourselves. Being an organization, what is our vision in future, which I want to be achieved with? And in order to reach that vision, what are our missions? What are our objectives of our business or of our company, organization? At the same time, now, if you want to deliver or deal with this product and all, how this is to be taken into the market, right? What strategies are you going to follow? What are the tactics do we require to follow? This is nothing to do with the product. What is that you're developing? Okay. So to make your product successfully penetrated into the market and make it successful in implementation, not in planning and design, because planning and design happens, but end of the day, most of the people fails in implementation. How are we failing? Because you have to place it in a right time at a right place, at the right situation. This is where it is important. So this is where generally tactics is required. So especially whenever we are working on product development, this most technique underlinedly we use. Because organizations, normally whenever we work on the product development, we use it because competitive analysis, right? So market analysis, market research, apart from all I'm talking about, those are the ones which you are analyzing the external things, like external conditions of the customer, competitor, all that. But end of the day, we have to think about ourselves, right? Where you are strong, where you are weak. We have to do SWOT analysis. At the same time, the solution or the product you are going to develop must be matches to the objectives of our organization. Then only it has a value. Otherwise, there is of no value. For example, I'll take myself as an example. I am an agile coach. My profession is an agile coach. Where I'll be successful, where am I successful, where I'll be successful, whenever I'm teaching something relating to business analysis, agile and all, or something relating to project management, or else something relating to business architecture or something, I'll be successful. If I leave all these aside and have something relating to DevOps or Java, .NET, something, if I feel those are good, will I become successful? No, because my major strengths are these. These are my major strengths. So by keeping all these into an account, keeping all these aside for some time, just because of different immediate benefits, if I have switch over my career, means to the other areas and all everything, I'll be a failure person. Why? Because that's not my territory to teach with. That's not my territory. My territory is this. So I have to assess myself, my strength, my organization, where we are strong. That is required, not by individual, maybe by organization, I can say. If I am an organization, if you call it as, right? So mission, objective, strategies, and tactics is the one which is to identify the internal factors, right? So this is what generally most technique is being used. This is the third one. Fourth one is called CATWay. Fourth one is called CATWay. Before I'm going to explain this technique, I would like to ask one question to you guys. Please answer. Here is the scenario. I'm giving one example. Let's say, for example, you are going to develop an online shopping application to one of your customers. One customer who is very successful in online shopping, something like Flipkart, Amazon, right? Amazon, Flipkart, like that. There is some XYZ shopping portal was there. XYZ online shopping portal. They are very successful, very long time. They had very good client base, turnover, everything. Everything. Okay. Please listen carefully. Everything. They came to you. They approached your organization to you. And they want to do some modifications to with this existing portal. They want to. One is they want to change the user interfaces which is already existing in the portal, because those user interfaces and all, everything that user experiences, look and feel, everything was using by them from a old time, from a very long time. Even their customers were also adjusted to that. Now all of a sudden they wants to make some changes for some reason. Okay, reason is indefinite. Forget about the reason, leave it. But that's what their requirement was. First point. Second, they wants to add some new service lines into the existing business what they were doing, right? So for these two things, a customer who is already successfully running now, he's in the process of running his business successfully. Now they have approached you, your organization, you're all the members of the IT company. Okay, right? Most of the, think from a BA perspective. Okay, think from that, you are a business analyst guys, right? So all of you were BAs. Now, being a business analyst, what is that first you consider, or first you have to keep in mind, or first, what are the points you have to get clarity first? If this kind of situation you come across, or if someone come across to you, if they're asking something relating to that, what is the first thing you assess? Anyone? What is that first thing you are going to assess? What is the first thing you are going to assess? Do you want me to repeat that question, or is that question understood to everyone? Is that question understood, or do you want me to repeat again?
Can you repeat one?
Yeah, I'm repeating question again as follows. For example, there is a retail online shopping portal, something like Amazon, Flipkart. There is a company called XYZ. Okay, they are running their business successfully for a very long time. They have very good customer base, very good turnover. It's good, all good. They have approached you. They want to make some changes in their portal. Means they want you to change some user interface designs, which they were using for a very long time. They want to change some user experience, user gap, right? So that appearances and all, everything, they want some changes for some reason, whatever the reason it could be, they want it. A second, they want to add some new service lines into their existing business, right? So for these two things, they have approached you. For your organization, you're all BAs. Now, what is that the first thing you keep into an account, or what is that first thing you have to get a clarity? Being a BA, what should be your thought process? What will be your thought process at this stage? If this
Maybe
situation will come across.
Can we ask what is your pain area? Why do you want to do this change?
Okay, pain areas you will be discussing. Okay, accepted. Apart from that,
And
pain points. We are talking about pain points. Okay.
No, I mean, why do you need a change?
Okay, he has given you the he has given the enough reply to you. He has given the actual reply. You are satisfied. For example, he has given the reply.
No.
You have satisfied.
My understand. No. My question is, why do you want a change? Meaning, whether if it is a regulatory requirement or it is a user own, it's just a look and feel requirement, or it's a functional change that they are doing. Let's first understand the category of the requirement.
All that you have understood, Nanak. What I'm saying is, if you are a BA, because the procedure, whatever you said is right. So by keeping all these aside, I'm saying, you're talking about regulatory part, user experiences part, right? All that. By keeping all these aside, what is in other area, what is that you being a BA, you have to be focused. See, whatever the answer you have given, being a business analyst, it is relevant, accepted. But my question is not that. My question is, being a business analyst, anyway, you do this. This is a regular activity. Anyone, you are a business analyst, you should answer. You should ask them, right? Why are you making us to do some changes? What was the reason behind that? So you get answers for all these questions. Anyway, that will be there. Anyway, that you do it, right? I'm not saying that you don't do that. You do that. Apart from all that, what are the other areas you have to be focused? Other areas. Apart from the regular one, what is that we are discussing now? Leave all about this. All these. Whatever are we learning, forget about all these. This anyway you are doing it. As a BA, you do this, all these. Okay.
Okay.
This is a common thing. Okay. I am not asking these. Any other areas you will be focused. What are those areas? Unidentified areas, which are important. This kind of example I'm talking about. Underline this point. Please listen carefully. This kind of example, whatever I have told you.
Maybe certifications, like any regulatory certifications required, something like that.
No.
I believe a rollback plan will be the critical one over here, that we do delta factors and along with the rollback plans, so that if anything goes wrong, we roll back to the original thing. And
okay, those are all being an application development. In order to make it more safe and secure, you are thinking all these. Anyway, being a BA, you are thinking all this, because this is a natural thinking of a BA, which you are supposed to do. You are doing it. Great. Accepted. I am not asking all these, because it's a complete contrast to an extent possible. Not 100%. A contrast information you have to understand. What was that in this situation? Kiran, Abhishek, Nanak, Janak Raman. Anyone? See, again, I'm repeating. Being a BA, whatever you have mentioned so far, everything is accepted. These are the common things. These are the common things, but depends on the situation that whichever I have given you. What are the other areas of the point you have to consider first? Among all these, apart from all these are all anyway you're doing it. Apart from that. Because there are other points. What are those? To be honest, one point. Majorly one point.
Changes to be made, does it match the vision and the mission of the company?
Okay. Anyway that you will be, that's a part of your BA. Apart from that, you are nearer, but you are not to the exact point, Mr. Manoj. There you are nearer, but not the exact point.
see, from project perspective, if we have considered already time, cost, scope, everything we have discussed, requirements.
Yes, everything you have discussed, but there is a line of thinking you have to change. You have to change your line of thinking here to some extent. Of course, this is relevant, but I don't say it is a complete constant one, but the direction of thinking should change in this situation. What was that?
Is it ROI kind of thing?
Okay, return of investment. Okay, that is also agreed. No. You are thinking from your customer perspective, but you are missing one point here. You are thinking your customer perspective, right? You are thinking what is good for their customer. You have to go in deep into that. What was that?
Risk assessment.
Maybe.
Risk assessment.
Right. What was that? Risk assessment.
Yes.
Risk assessment means impacted area of the business. Whether
Yes,
the changes you are making, is it giving a positive effect or an adverse effect to the business, has to be analyzed.
Analyze that we have to do before giving the confirmation.
Right? Understood.
Yeah.
Abhishek, Nanak, Janak Raman, Manoj.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So whatever they said, you have the points you were mentioned, absolutely right. I honor you. But end of the day, the thinking process should be in such a way, customer is asking you for what reason. You can ask me one thing, Raj, don't you know about all these things to the customer? Might be, but you are a BA. When customer is coming with this situation, you should ask in what way it is impacting your business. Is it impacting in a positive way or a negative way? Adverse. What is adverse here? For example, if you remember, while I'm explaining, I have mentioned one point very clear. You might have observed or not. User interface designs were using by the customer for a very long time, which is being adjusted by their customers already. Now, all of a sudden, if you are making some changes out of it, don't you think it's an adverse effect? Sometimes it happens. Don't you think so? Yes or no?
Yes. User friendliness.
They understand, right? So coming back to the point, what is that are we going to discuss is the kind of technique for this is called CATWI. So CATWI is a kind of technique we are using to identify the impact of the changes happens because of the business process. What is that you are making? This is what the next technique. What is that I am about to explain you about this CATWI technique. What is CATWI technique is? CATWI is a kind of technique which will be used to identify the impact of the changes happens in any of the business process which is existed at the customer place. Okay, so how
1
it is
minute.
getting impacted? Either it
Sorry
is a
to
positive
interrupt.
impact. Go
Sorry
ahead.
to interrupt, Raj. The concept that you are teaching us today or mentioning here today, will you be sharing any document for us to refer or understand? Please share if so.
There is no
Thank
document,
you.
Mr. Nanak, because in reference to the techniques, there is no document will be, because these are the techniques depends on the kind of situation you have to take. For that,
Okay.
there is no document. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
Do you understand what I said? Because I can share you a diagram, I can show you a diagram, that's it. But end of the day, in reference to the document means, see, document is only an evidence. End of the day, what leads to documentation? Based upon the decision as well as the situation you have analyzed.
No.
To
My
analyze the
point is,
situation,
if there is a document, we can refer it in future course of
there
whenever we
won't be
come
any
across.
document like that sort in business analysis, because for this you don't see any document as such as separate for that.
Okay.
Because see, for
Okay.
example, I'll tell you an example to you. Let's say you are a BA. Okay, you are a BA. You are a business analyst. You are developing this cloud-based point of sale system, isn't it? Right? You're developing a POS. In this, there is a process called billing. There is an option called billing. Commodity price. Commodity price is what decided by the manufacturer. Okay. Please listen carefully. Now, how about the tax percentage, taxing structure?
That's decided by the government.
Is an external factor or an internal factor, which is impacting the application?
External factor.
Right? So that you are taking a decision based on the process. So just because of that, you can't prepare a document, right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
No. My point is, there will be a provision. If there is a percentage of tax, then it will be a parameter where we can go ahead and define it, right?
See, you're talking about the parameter of the taxes. What I'm saying is, when you are developing an application, as far as the factors you are talking about into consideration, this tax percentage as well as the decision of the tax percentage is being defined by you or an external government authority. Who is going to define this?
Fair enough.
External
But
factor,
end of the
right?
day, it will be captured in the system as a parameter.
Forget about that. Forget whether it is captured in the parameter or not. Forget. I am not asking you. So is it an external factor or not? Right?
It is definitely an external factor.
Yeah. Let me complete. So here, what is that you do? Being a business analyst, when you are trying to understand the requirements or when you are going to provide a solution in this process, whatever the factors are you trying to influence and all everything, were a mix of it. Some external factors will be considered, some internal factors. Just because of external and internal factors, you can't prepare a document as separate. That's what I'm trying to say. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nanak.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Right. So, because as you are asking me about the document to show, there is no document, because end of the day, to take decisions to take, these techniques are using. End of the day, documentation and all everything is for the whole thing, right? So by considering the government decision or whatever it is, whatever the external impacts and all everything, to identify that these techniques are being used. These are the techniques which are underlined, which can't be shown on a screen, but based on the decisions and as well as the interactions you have made and all everything, these techniques underlinedly we use, but we don't put it in a document format. Because sometime back I have told you, for example, if I'm talking about external factors, Do I think all these will be taken? Just because of that external political decision means, can I take internal and external into account? I can't take environmental into account because it is nowhere relevant here, right or not, right? So these techniques are underlined, which you have to follow when you are taking a decision, or when you are interacting with your stakeholders and all everything, before you are making a solution out of it. So these are the underlying points. These points cannot be framed as a document, because when you talk about, for example, external factors, all the factors, whatever I have told you in external factors like political, economical, social, legal, environmental, all these won't be applicable in the project, right? For example, you're developing a POS, it may not be applicable, all these. Maybe a political factor may be applicable. Maybe a legal factor may be inapplicable. Maybe an environmental factor may be applicable. Understood, Nanak? You're clear or not? What I'm saying?
Yeah, but at least can you share the presentations?
There is no presentation. There is a screenshot. That's it. I'll show you.
Screenshot. Whatever. See, my
I'm
only point
writing.
is, if
Whatever I'm
tomorrow,
writing.
after 3 months, after 6 months, if we need to refer something, it will be a refresher for us. That's it.
Okay. These are only screenshots. That's it. This is what? Political, economical, social, SWOT, all that. That's it. That's only.
Yeah, and these are actually the generic things. If you, even in my MBA, I have went through it. CATVO is something new for me, but others are quite generic. If you Google it out, you will get that.
Yeah, the reason why in the prior of the session, I have given this disclaimer, if you remember. When I started business analysis techniques, I have mentioned that point very clear. The reason it is. It is not specific only for ITBA. This is the generalized.
Right, sir. But see, SWOT analysis we would have known from 12th class, from the degree. But when there is a need, our mind will not be in a position to think about that and utilize that.
Yeah, but that comes with experience, Mr. Nanak, because as you are a professional, you know, that comes with, whatever the techniques I am talking about, these techniques, of course, we are using because of that I am explaining. Doesn't mean that people should also think in the same manner. Yeah, it comes with experience. Agreed.
Yeah.
It happens. And moreover, I would like to mention that same, again, I'm repeating, these techniques, whatever are we discussing, are not specified something relating to ITBA for sure. Business analyst role, whoever is playing a BA role in any of the organization, these techniques can be used, not only for ITBA. Right. This point I was mentioned in the beginning only. Okay. So these are the generalized techniques. Even for a BA, there is one more technique. What real technique a BA uses, I will tell you last. Because after CATVO, there is the technique that I'll explain that. Okay.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Can I go ahead?
Please, sir.
Nanak, any questions?
No. Wrongly pressed.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay, fine. So this is what the technique. So CATVO is a kind of technique which is being used to identify the changes in the impact of the business process. Because whenever we are performing a business process, for example, if there are any changes happens in the business process, changes you are making for any of the project or for a customer, how it is getting impacted and what is getting impacted, to assess that, this CATVO technique is being used. In this CATVO technique, first C stands for customer. C stands for customer. Who is customer here? People who are using that application, or who is going to benefit out of that business or that application or that project, whoever it is. So they are the customers. So whether is this change is giving a positive or an adverse effect to them should be considered. The example I have given, again, I'm repeating that. Customer is expecting you to make some changes on the user interface designs, but being a BA, you have to consider and you have to think in this manner as well. If I'm making changes involved, in what way this is getting benefited, as well as providing an adverse effect to the business end of the day. It doesn't mean that customer doesn't have that knowledge, but end of the day, our thinking process of a BA should also think in this manner. C, customer. Second, A stands for actors. Actors means people who are involving in the situation. You have to consider those people into an account. For example, this e-commerce portal, what is that I said? Whoever is the backend team, and all, those people should be educated because of this prior. If you don't educate them, or if you not provide a formal training to them on this, then they are the affected people. So A stands for actors. T stands for transformation process. Means, for example, if you want to make some changes, are you making changes all at a time? No, right? So we do the changes one after another, isn't it? Right? That is what we call it as transformation stands for T. T stands for transformation. Next, W stands for worldview. The bigger picture and as well as its impact, how it is getting impacted. So impact, please do remember, impact need not be a negative word. Impact can also be considered and used in a positive manner also. So we have to think from both the ways. You have to think from a positive impact as well as how it is adversely impacting it. Means negatively it is impacting. That also has to be considered, which is called worldview. Next, O stands for owner. Who owns it? Whereas E stands for environmental constraints, right? Environment which is in and around us. At the same time, you have to consider your competitors also into an account, because there are lot of case studies you might be knowing, right? Just because of the successful product is going on, especially for beverages and all, you can see, just because of the flavor changes they have made or something of that sort, that products were miserably failed and it was almost vanished from the market. Do you know that, right? So I think I can't give you the examples, but still there are a lot of examples for that, right? So just because of the decision they have taken, that decision has leads to vanishing from the existing market, right? So it should not be a boon to a competitor to cross ourselves, right? That is required. So when you are a business analyst, when you're trying to understand the requirements and as well as the situation of the customer, it's not only about the other areas of BA, what is that you have to do in regular intervals, but your thought process should be in this manner also, how it is getting impacted in a positive or an adverse impacted. These points should also be considered here. Clear to you, everyone?
So in this, can you explain more on actors thing?
Actors means people who are, means employees of the e-commerce portal. For example, that XYZ e-commerce portal, right? That employees should educate about the changes, what is that you are making out of it. You have to educate them. You have to take their concerns. All this has to be taken into an account.
Okay, so actors would mean both the parties who are doing the change plus those on which we'll have to take future trainings for the new UI.
Yes. Because for example, it is very simple, Abhishek. For example, there is a ERP application your organization is using. Okay, organization is using. Now a new ERP application wants to introduce into the organization, right? What are the external things? Of course, maybe directly you may not be seeing all these, but what are the external things or the hidden things which keep into account by the management? Apart from the cost and all that, in what way it will be provided as the success and how to make it successful by implementing this by our team members or not, isn't it? Am I right or not, Abhishek?
Yeah.
Right. So we have to consider. So actors should also consider, because end of the day, who is going to use this? Who is going to work on this? People who are within that organization has to use this. So those people should also consider while you are making changes. These are the people we are discussed earlier called stakeholders or end users. Understood? Clear, Abhishek? Right?
Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you.
This is what generally CATWI technique is. Means customers, actors, transformation process, worldview, owner, and environmental constraints. So this is a technique. So PESTEL is a technique for external factors, SWOT analysis for self-assessment. MOST technique will be used for internal factors, CATWA is a technique which is being used to identify the impact of the changes happens in any of the business process. Last but not least, which is widely used in IT, especially for IT business analyst, what is that we use is called Moscow technique. MOSCOW, Moscow technique, which is called must, should, could, and would. Let me share you and explain to you. There is a slide for that. 1 minute, I'll show you. Moscow technique, must, should, could, would, right? So this is the technique we follow. So there in the presentation, there are a lot of presentations. Yeah, it's called as Moscow technique, must, should, could, would, right? So that is the technique. I will tell you 1 minute. Yeah, sorry, here it is, right? So Moscow technique, which was. So this is the technique which normally we use being a business analyst in, especially in IT projects in most of the times. Means this prioritization we made into 4 different parts. One is must, second is should, third is could, followed by will not have. So prioritization, the first is must have, which are the requirements which are necessary for us to complete the project successfully. Those will be taken under the must category. When it comes to should have category, requirements which are important, but which is not necessary to add to the existing application. This is comes under should. Could have will give you a value addition to the project. Even though it gives a value addition to the project when you are working on something. At the same time, will not have means the requirements need not be required now in this project, but it may be required maybe for the future needs of the client in later times. This is how generally this prioritization technique is called Moscow, which is being used by the business analyst, especially in the IT BA field, because apart from the remaining things I'm talking about, because remaining techniques can also be used even in IT, non-IT as well, once in a while, because combinations, because we don't use one technique, depends on the situation to situation. Whatever the technique are we implying while we are interacting on taking decisions and all, everything varies. Because even sometimes pestle, most, CATWA, everything will be included in the project. Right? Depends on that particular situation and the environment we were in. Last but not least, but this technique is the one which is used majorly for implementation of the project. Hence, this is mandatory. But this is, I don't say that those are all not mandatory, but among all that, this is one thing which is mandatory. because which requirements have to be addressed now, which will be giving you a value addition to the project. So end of the day, team people, technical people should be aware of this. Then only it has a more advantage over, and so that implementation will be takes place. Especially in the field of Agile, we use this technique, especially in the field of Agile also. Okay, not only in Agile also we use this technique. Because to prioritize it and all everything in the product backlog, generally these techniques and all everything will be used by the team. I'm talking about not as a BA role. Usually teams will be using this prioritization technique to prioritize the requirements. High level requirements and high priority requirements will be on the top of the product backlog, and the remaining things will be in the below. That's how it will be. Must have means what are the requirements which are compulsory to develop it. Those are, we call it as must have and should have. I'll give you an example from the point of sale system context. Must have means, for example, product billing, right? For example, you are performing billing, right? So there is a calculation or the complexity which is involved in terms of the functionality for billing, right? So billing is a must-have feature, which is especially required for an application, because without that you can't complete the application. That is what we call it as must-have stands for. For example, will not have means, for example, you are enabling an app, right? You are giving an MPOS or an app feature kind of for a point of sale system, which is not nearly necessary, right? But that is not necessary here. But those are requirements, those are important to complete the project, but that may not be a necessary thing, because that MPOS and all everything may be an additional thing you can give. But just because of POS you have given doesn't mean that the project is successfully completed, right? So those are the differences you need to understand from must and should. Clear, Mr. Kiran? Do you understand this?
Okay. If you don't mind, can you repeat it this once again? Must and should.
Yeah. See, Kiran, see, must have means in reference to the point of sale system I'm talking about. In reference to the point of sale system. Billing, whatever the billing module are we talking about? In reference to the module I'm talking about, billing modules and all, these modules are mandatory. Without these modules, can you complete this project? Can you complete this project?
No, we can say regulatory requirements are must to have. Simple.
Can you repeat your answer again?
Regulatory requirements are must to have.
Regulatory requirements, see, whatever the requirements are you talking about, regulatory requirements are the hidden ones. The regulatory requirements are not only the ones, right? Regulatory requirements are also required. I never say that regulatory requirements are not comes under must have. I never say that. As an example, you are asking about must have, I'm talking about billing. Billing module is a must have requirement.
Billing
That's
module,
what I say.
okay.
I
Right,
never
understood.
say that regulatory requirements are not comes under must have. I never say that. Right? I understood you the difference. Understood, Kiran, right? Regulatory requirements are the considerable points. We don't take it as a, because that you don't see on the screen. See, whatever the regulatory requirements you are taking won't be appeared on the screen to develop. But those are the influential decision making points.
Okay.
We understand the difference, Kiran, right? Regulatory requirements are important. It's required. I never say no that, and there is no confusion on it. But regulatory requirements you don't see on the screen. When you are taking a decision, when you are developing that particular requirement, these regulatory requirements are the considerable point. Those are the back-end things which influences that requirement to make it mandatory. You are clear? Yes or no? Right? So that's one. So prioritization is also one of the technique which normally we use when you are working on that project, right? So these are the techniques being a BA, one should be used. One is special technique, which is being used for external factors. Second, you will be using SWOT analysis, well for self-assessment. At the same time, most technique is used for internal factors. CATWA is a technique which is used to identify the changes happens in any of the business process, all that. Last but not least, Moscow technique is being used to prioritize the requirements to develop the application, because this is majorly used for the technical people, because this is for the context of the technical people. For example, there were 100 requirements. Out of these 100 requirements, which are to be considered first, right? Which are to be considered next, right? So the prioritization should be made, because which are not priority as of now. If you are developing now, then there will be of no value. That's the reason why, especially in the field of Agile, there is a concept called release. Normally, we do the release planning. First of all, release planning will be made in Agile first. So in that release planning, for example, if that release planning will be for next, for example, that release planning will be for the next next 3 months, for example. In that 3 months, whatever is required, that will be kept as a priority and those will be developed. That's what generally in Agile we do. So prioritization will be given importance on that context. Is it clear to everyone? Nanak, Abhishek, Kiran, Janak Raman, Swati.
Yes, sir, it
Manoj.
is clear. We are using the release methodology. So on the basis of the quarter, we were doing the, for example, we are taking some requirements from the client, and then we will prioritize that. Okay, this will get done in this particular release, and that for that also we are having some
In
plan.
Agile, we do that. Yes, in
Yeah.
Agile, we do that. Whenever we follow Agile, because why are we going Agile nowadays is because very simple. What is required, we are developing it. That's it.
Yes,
Normally
that
in
tracking
Agile,
also good.
in Agile, what we do is, first of all, we do the release planning. So based on the release planning and all, whatever the requirements are important, those issues will be kept as a high priority. That's what we do in Agile. Understood? Clear, Swati?
Yes, sir. Yes, got it, sir. Thank you.
So majorly, I don't say that prioritization technique won't be used in traditional model. I don't want to, I'm not saying that. But major use of prioritization we do, especially in the real result of that prioritization will be shown, especially in the form of Agile, especially because the iterations were very small. The durations are in small iterations wherein strict timelines are being maintained. Within that minimum timeline, you have to complete. For that, generally, this prioritization is mainly useful. At the same time, even we use in traditional model also, because that's the reason why nowadays this DevOps combination and all everything came into existence. Because of it. Because of that, making changes can be made at any time and you can work on that. Right. So that's what all this. So these are all the techniques of BA. Right. So these are the techniques based on the situation to situation. These techniques are being used. Right. It will not be the same all the time. Techniques are used depends on the situation to situation. These techniques are being used here. Clear, everyone? So this is what all about BA techniques and all. If you have any questions, please go ahead. I'll give you 10 minutes time. Then we'll move on to the next knowledge area called requirement lifecycle management. Any questions from your end? Or else I'll go to the next point. Any questions in this regard? Nanak, Abhishek, Kiran, Archita, Janak Raman, Manoj, Meena, Swati, Parthasarthi, Savita, anyone?
Sir, I think you can proceed. You
Okay.
may proceed.
Yeah, why? Because you are in the stage of career transformation, because there are non-IT people are involved. Hence, I'm repeatedly asking all that once and twice to all you guys, because otherwise my flow goes as usual. That was the problem. Okay, right. Thank you. Right. So let me start this next knowledge area, which is called requirement lifecycle management. So the first knowledge area you have understood so far, business analysis, planning and monitoring. Second, illustration and collaboration we have done. After that, we have identified the business case objectives, business assessing the capability gaps, all that. The next knowledge area is called requirement lifecycle management. Requirement lifecycle management is the other knowledge area where the requirements, whatever we have identified, must be managed in this knowledge area. This is not only the requirements, the kind of designs what technical people have made so far, maybe a high-level designs or low-level designs. Or it could be the changes whichever happens before the project starts. Because once the project starts, there are some changes might be taken place. But before that, whatever the changes, proposed changes required and all, everything will be taking into account. So when you are working on requirement lifecycle management, the very first thing what is that we have to do is that we need to trace the requirements, right? Tracing the requirements is what we have to do. Now, what is meant by tracing of requirements and why do we require to do the tracing of requirements and for what reason? Normally, this tracing of requirements is the one which is majorly useful for two different people. One is for the business people, one is for the development team, one is for the testing team. Because what developer has developed, what tester has tested, both should have a connect. Both should have a connect. So for that, generally there are two cases. One is use case, second is test case. There are 2 points were there. One is use case, second is test case. Use case is the one which is used from the developer perspective, right? Developer, whoever is developing that particular functionality. For them, there are some couple of use cases which has to be prepared by the BA based upon the requirements. What is that we have taken? I'll show you an example. Last session I have shown that. Again, I'll show you again. Okay, that is use case. Second, test case. Test case means normally in testing there are two phases. One is manual testing. Second is automation testing. What is manual testing? Manual testing means there are different documents will be prepared so that you don't see any tools, nothing. You don't see any tools like Selenium, Silk, Windrunner, right? We don't use any tools in manual testing. What we do is that whatever the requirements we have will be prepared in a format called test case document. Means whatever the test cases we have, everything will be prepared on the test case document. Whatever the requirements taken and as well as accepted by the team, and whatever is about to develop by the team, that will be prepared in a form of test case by the testing team. And there are two results. One is expected result, second is actual result. Expected result based on the customer expectation, this will be updated by the testing team. When actual result come into picture, when this particular functionality is developed, if it is right, for example, both expected as well as actual result is the same, because that we do in automation testing using different tools and all that, testing people will do that. If both are same, the test condition will be considered as pass. If both are not same, generally the test condition is considered as failed. And failed means defects. Whatever the defects and all, everything will be written on the document. And that will be shared to the respective development team, respective words, so that they will be looking after that and they do the necessary changes accordingly. To do this tracing between use cases to test cases, generally requirement traceability matrix will be prepared by the testing team. Generally, right? Requirement traceability matrix will be prepared by the testing team initially, because they are the one who are preparing test cases. These test cases and as well as use cases should have a similarity. For that, there is a traceability usually will be considered and called as two traceabilities. One is forward traceability, second is backward traceability. Forward traceability means use cases to test cases. Backward traceability means test cases to use cases. Right? Forward traceability means use case to test case. Backward traceability means test cases to use cases. Both should be equal. Means whatever the use case taken, the same thing has to be implemented as a test case, and you have to get a result called success. Accepted, pass. If it was not the case, there are some defects were identified. Means normally how these defects are identified based on the automation testing. Because whatever the code written by the development team, whatever the work completed by the development team, that will be tested by the testing team using different tools like Selenium, Silk, Windrunner, all that, different tool, Load Runner, all that, different tools and all. They will identify, and whatever the bugs they have identified and all. How come they have identified the bugs? Because there are some test cases they have prepared. So based upon the test case, if that was the one which test development team has completed, we consider that is pass. Otherwise, we consider that it is failed and it has some defects. To identify that, generally this requirement traceability matrix is being used for. Now I am going to show you use case and followed by the test cases so that you will have an idea over this. This is what generally an use case document stands for, right? This is how generally an use case document. Usually this use case document will be prepared by the business analyst team for all the functionalities, whatever the functionalities. Yesterday I have shown it. Again, I'm repeating you. Okay. So use case template. This is a template. Please do remember, this is a template I am showing you. In that, whatever the example was, this example belongs to ATM system. For example, if you take ATM system, there is a functionality in ATM system called money withdrawal. Okay, that's a functionality, right? So for that functionality, this is a use case template example which I am showing you. Like this, there are multiple, maybe even it may be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, whatever it is, right? How many functionalities do we have? Those many use cases has to be prepared by the BA. Okay, has to be prepared by the BA. For what reason this is? This is for the reason and as well as benefit of the development team to develop the functionalities in a right manner. The same thing we are writing as a user stories now in Agile. That's an advanced version. In simple ways to say, use cases, these user stories, whatever we are writing in the Agile, of course, formats and all, everything are different. This is an advanced version, right? Use cases, advanced version, nothing but user story. Simply you can understand that. Is it clear? I think there is a question. Yes. Whatever the documents I am sharing you, templates, I'll share it. Yes. I'll do that. I'll do that, Abhishek. No problem.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Right. So this is what generally the use case template is. Again, I'm repeating, this is a use case template which normally prepared by the BA for all the functionalities, whatever the functionalities we have taken, for all the functionalities, this use case template has to be prepared. For what purpose? This is for the purpose of explaining clearly about what and how this is to be done from the perspective of a developer, because developer should understand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scenarios should be understandable to them. For that reason, this template is being used. How many functionalities we are developing, those many use cases will be prepared. This is normally this use cases we can see in traditional model. Advanced version is user stories in Agile. Okay. That way I can relate. Now, here we have to mention the use case ID number. That number can be anything. It number can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. Next, title will be mentioned here. Title means that respective functionality. Because if I'm taking ATM machine as an example here, money withdrawal is a functionality, right? Money withdrawal is a functionality. So that itself is a title. So what happens in money withdrawal? What was the description? That will be written under the description. You have to write it in the description column. Now, who are going to use this? Users are the primary actors. Who is a primary actor here? Money withdrawal will be done by a customer, right? Customer. So customer is a primary actor here. Now, if this primary actor has to perform something, there are two conditions applied. One is precondition, second is post-condition. What is precondition and what is post-condition? Precondition means before you want to perform money withdrawal, what is that to be done? That's what we call it as precondition. What is precondition? Inserting an ATM card or else inserting ATM card into the barcode scanner and all. That's what generally the precondition is. What is the post-condition? End result. End result is nothing but the post-condition. Now, after completion of that, I'll show you how similar is this to user stories. How this is being usually used in user story. Advanced version is user story. Okay. So how it is similar, I will tell you once I have completed this. Okay. So post-condition means what is that finally you are concluding with? This is what we call it as post-condition. Okay. Means withdraw money is the final deliverable. It is required. Now, whatever the transaction as well as the steps which must be followed between pre and post condition are nothing but the success scenarios. Right? Are the success scenarios. But in any logic and whatever the functionality or whatever the logic we are applying, there is a basic principle called if and else. For any logic, there are two things. One is if, second is else. If it is succeeded, this is the result. Else, what is the result, right? So that if else condition will be there, right? Where will it go and all? Whenever we prepare some flow charts and all everything, this. This we are doing since last ages, right? So those comes under extensions here. What are those extensions? For example, what is that we have given when this when this post condition will be successful? When customer has given the right password or right PIN number, then it will be successful. Okay. But else, what is else here? For example, if customer has given wrong password, what will happen? There must be a message. It has to be appeared on the screen that please type your password correctly. But here there is a condition applied. What was that condition? This password, whatever the password are you typing, is consecutively 2 times if you have, or 3 times, or 4 times, whatever it is. Again, it is depends on the customer details. Customer will tell you, right? Because these conditions may apply, depends on the customer, what is that they say. For example, here you can see condition allowed only twice, only 2 times. After 2 times, what will happen? Maybe after 2 hours, he has to use it, or maybe after 24 hours. Whatever that provision tells you, the same thing will be applied here. Next thing, what was the next thing? If a customer has chosen the wrong type of transaction, then they will be having a chance where they can cancel, because there must be an option for cancel button where they can cancel it and they can do the transaction again here. So these are the extensions which are required to make your scenario complete. Okay, success, because if it is wrong password, it is not success. But if it is right password, scenario will be succeeded. But there are some extensions we have to consider. Apart from this, there is one more logic. What was that logic? In order to make this money withdrawal successful, there is one more logic which was there. Of course, it was not mentioned here. There is one more logic. What was that? Anyone? Can anyone say? People who are coming from development background will have can explain this well, because can tell you this from development side. What was the logic here? Because in order to make this money withdrawal successful, apart from the extension, that success scenarios, whatever I have given, there is one more logic which is hidden here, which has to be mentioned. What was that? Anyone? One logic we have to write. What was that logic? We have to write one logic. People from programming will tell you better because they have that idea. What was that logic? There is a logic has to be applied here. What was that? Anyone? Logic is as follows. Logic is money, whatever the customer is mentioning should be less than the one which is there in the account balance. That is the logic that has to be applied. That has to be applied because there will be some conditions like minimum balance conditions will be there. From organization to bank, it will vary. Some banks doesn't allow below than the minimum balance. If that money will be there, it won't debit it. Some banks they. Some banks will put some charges out of it. If you don't maintain the minimum balance, they charges it. Anyway, that you know everywhere. So there is a logic which has to be applied by the development team because there is a logic for mini withdrawal. What was that? Money, whatever they are entering, should be lesser than the one which is there in the account balance. Then only the transaction will become successful. Otherwise, they get a message. What message they get? Insufficient funds. Even a 1 rupee extra, if you type, or 1 rupee means example, I'm saying, even 100 rupees extra, you are typing, automatically it will give you an error message. Says that insufficient funds. Understood? Everyone, clear? Right? So this is what generally use case document stands for. So this use case document has to be prepared by the BA. Now, how this is relevant to user story? Because as I told you, this is an advanced version of user story is an advanced version of use case. That's what I have told you. How? Because in user story, normally user story will be written like this. If you want to write a user story, if you want to write a user story, there is a template normally we follow. As a system user, action, and result. This is what generally the template which normally we follow when you are writing down an example user story. For example, example 1, creating a login page. Right? This is what the example I have taken. Okay. Now the user story as follows. As a system user, I want you to login credentials so that I can use the system. Here, using the system is what the result. But who is going to use this? System user is going to use this. What action has to be performed? Creating login credentials is an action has to be performed. Who has to perform this? This has to be performed by development team. Am I right or not? Understood, everyone? Right? This is how generally in user story will be written. But if this user story, if I have written this and given to you, will this is being sufficient for you to develop? Or do you say anything is missing here?
Acceptance criteria is the basic one.
Acceptance criteria, because last time in the beginning I have told you, right? Acceptance criteria. So those acceptance criteria points are nothing but these points. Whatever the success scenarios here we talk about in the use case template, those templates were nothing but we written in a form of acceptance criteria. This is what generally the advanced version I can say. Clear to everyone? No? Understood? Kiran, Savita, Sophia, Swati, Vivek, Abhishek, Manoj, Nanak. Clear?
Yes, sir, got it.
right? So this is what generally use cases we have to prepare. We have to prepare the use cases. Unless until if you don't prepare, because these use cases advanced wise, in Agile, we are writing user stories because that much of preparing all that takes a lot of time because functionalities, documents has to prepare first, BRD, all that. After that, use cases has to be prepared. There are a lot there. In spite of all that, what we do, simply we write user stories in Agile to save the time and to make it more precise and clear, right? This is what generally this thing is. Now, coming back to the point. So this is what generates, so tracing of requirements. So to trace the requirements, what is required? You need to have a use case here. You need to have a use case. Now, what is test case here? Test case is the document which will be prepared by the testing team. I will show you one more document. Test case, I think it is, there is a certain real document there. I will show you 1 minute. So test case, sample test case document, it's not so clear. 1 minute, I'll show you. Yeah, I think, yeah. Test case document here. Yeah, it's in right. So this is a test case document sample you can see. Of course, let's see. Right. So this is what generally for a banking login system, this test case template was. So test case number will be mentioned, followed by the system and the product name, client details, blah, blah, blah. Next test scenario. Scenario has to be established here. Means for that particular scenario, there are a couple of actions to be performed under the test case. So
No,
what
you
is the
see,
test scenario?
Raj, sorry to interrupt. My understanding goes is first test scenario from the BRD. From test scenario, test cases will be prepared with the steps.
Sorry.
My understanding is test cases, test scenario will be prepared basis the BRD or the use case. From the test scenario, test cases will be prepared with the steps involved in it.
Not like that 100%. Who is this? 1 minute.
Nanak.
Nanak, yeah. Not 100% like this, Nanak. Actually, you're saying is partially true. Partially true, because normally what will happen, especially testing, even testing people also will be participating in requirement gathering. Also, even in the beginning days, even testing people will also be involved. So as long as we are gathering the requirements, being a BA for the requirement, what is that we are preparing, parallelly even testing people will also prepare. They'll also participate to gather the requirements. So these two things will happen parallelly. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because business requirements document, we are not finalizing 100% all the time, right? Because business requirements document, once we got a clarity in all these, which one business the case, right? So knowing about the objective, scope and all, based on that solution from their requirements will be identified. So even testing people will also travel along with the business analyst team parallelly. They will prepare an outline of test case documents initially to start with. So once there is a business requirements document which was seized, which was closed, and which was confirmed, then based on that necessary changes and all, everything will be done under the scenarios and as well as the test cases. Is it clear, Nanak? Understood?
Yes.
Because most of the people have some misconception over that testing people comes only at the time of after coding, right? Usually that's how our perception was.
That is how, that is how it was happening some 10 years before, 15 years
It
before.
has happened 10 years before, not now.
Yes. When I was handling things, that is how
Yes.
it used to be.
Yeah, it was. But after that, now the situation has changed. Even testing people will also be involved in the beginning of it. Because business analyst is gathering requirements from the perspective of development. Testing people is understanding the requirement from the end user perspective. Because they do their work parallelly, even business analyst will also do their work parallelly. Understood, Nanak? Clear?
Understood.
Right? So earlier in the beginning days of 2000s and all millennium, that time, yes, whatever you said is there. After that, the situation were changed, and they were even because they have to prepare this requirement traceability matrix and all everything in the beginning of the project, right? Then only they can trace all the requirements. Otherwise, it is difficult for them to trace the requirements. So this based on the scenarios and all everything. Each and every case, each and every procedure and all everything will be explained here. Followed by this, they'll be mentioning you the expected result. What should be the final result? So this is same thing as the use cases and as well as the requirements. What is that we have closed or finalized? So almost both use cases and as well as test cases must be same. So to confirm and to see whether how many use cases and as well as test cases how many use cases were prepared so far, completed so far, to trace out generally this testing people requires. So for that, requirement traceability matrix is being prepared by the testing team. Now, in what context BA is connecting to tracing of requirement means these requirements will be given by the BA, because business analyst is the person who will be acted as an entry gate to given all the requirements and all. That's the reason why this tracing of requirements is the first task, which is under requirement lifecycle management. Clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Right. After that, okay. Right. After that, the next thing is that maintaining of requirement. How are you going to maintain the requirements is the next task. So this is where generally, if you remember this maintaining of requirements, here I have told you in the first knowledge area, if I have explained these points to you, I mentioned here, right? You can see this information management and all. From here onwards, it will be derived. How you are going to manage your requirements, how you are going to capture the requirements, right? How you are confirming the requirements, what is the way of documenting it? Because are you preparing a documentation for this? Or are you going to write user stories for all the things? All these things and all, everything comes under maintaining of requirements. Means how you are going to maintain the requirements. Means maintaining of requirements, under which documentation do we follow? Normally, to maintain the requirement, there are two major documents we prepare, especially for a BA. We prepare two documents. The first document is called business requirements document. First document we called business requirements document, which majorly explains us about the business problem, goal, etc. Right? So, etc. Business problem, etc. All these things comes under business requirements, business problem, critical success factors, as is system to be. Means whatever we have done so far, right? Gap analysis, all that. Because when you are going to prepare this document, the rest of the things, whatever we have taken and whatever we have concluded, whatever we have decided, all the information will be carried here. Okay, all that information will be carried here, and finally these documentations will be prepared. After that, if there is any kind of changes to be made and all, we do the changes. That's the next level. Okay, that anyway, that is different. So this is what generally we call it as business requirements document, first document. Second document to manage requirements is called SRS, which is stands for Software Requirement Specification, which is called Software Requirement Specification, which explains us about hardware, software, right? So user interface designs or UX designs, or it explains us about the operating system, right? So what is the database are we going to use? All these will be prepared under the SRS document. In addition to that SRS document, these even functional and non-functional requirements, whatever the functional and non-functional requirements we have identified under the solution requirements, if you remember, I have explained some time back, those requirements document will also be a part of the software requirement specification. Usually, some people, what they do, SRS document, these functionalities and all, everything will be included in it. Will be included in it. Some people they don't include. Yeah, it's okay, Nanak, no problem. Anyway, class is under recording, right? No problem. Thank you. Right. So SRS document is completely a software requirement specification, which majorly explains us about hardware, software, what user interface designs we are using, operating system, database, all these things comes under software requirement specification. In this software requirement specification, even functional and non-functional requirements, documents will also be involved in this, right? Even functional, non-functional, whatever the functionalities and all, everything we have, these functional and non-functional requirements will also be included. I'll explain. I'll show those templates to you. I'll explain and I'll share those templates. Whatever the templates I am showing, I'll share it to you. Okay. Once this session is completed, underline this point. Okay. So templates will be forwarded so that no problem. So this functional and non-functional requirements will also be a part of SRS. Some people, what they do is they prepare functional and non-functional requirements as a separate documentation. Okay. So business requirements document, which majorly explains us about the business problem, etc. Software requirement specification majorly explains about hardware, software, user interface designs, operating system, database, all that. Along with this, even functional and non-functional requirements will also be included in it. So this is what generally how we are going to maintain the requirements. When you're talking about the maintaining of requirements, how do you do this is because of that. If you want to maintain the requirements, there are ways. To prepare documentation is one way of doing it. Again, in documentation, we have two. One is BRD, second is SRS, combination of functional and non-functional. And other way, when you follow agile practices and all, instead of writing documents and all, we write user stories. Because user stories, how to write on Jira, that will be in the last week, means next week. Next week, whenever we start. So based on the timelines, I'll show you how to write user stories, epics and all, everything on Jira. I will explain there of the case study, what is that we have taken. Okay, there you can see the practicals. I'll prepare, I'll show you how to write and all, you can understand that. Okay. So maintaining of requirements, documentation can be prepared. At the same time, even you can prepare what we call user stories. At the same time, even use cases we have prepared, right? So these are the different ways of maintaining requirements. Means if you want to maintain the requirements, in these ways, normally requirements maintenance will be come into existence. So how these documents looks like and all that explanation, once these points completed, I'll go back. Okay, let me complete these points. Then I'll go back to the maintenance of how those documents looks like and that explanation and all that I'll give later. Okay, once it is completed, I'll go back. Next, prioritization of requirements. This prioritization of requirements I have explained you some time back, right? How to prioritize the requirements and all using the Moscow technique and all I have explained. You understood that. Next, assessing requirement changes, because these requirement changes we have to understand in two different ways. Sometimes, as long as the project is not started, for example, the requirement document was not closed so far, right? It was not freezed so far. The changes, whatever we are making and all, we can do. But once the requirements document is freezed, once the team has started working on the application, there is a change order request form normally we prepare here. And this is where generally this assessing requirement changes come into picture. There is a form for this, which is called change order request. I will show you. There is a form called change order request. There is a form called change order request will be there. This change order request form will be mentioned here. In this change order request form, these changes will be made. First of all, initiation of the change request will be taken first. Because if there is any changes happens further, I'm talking about, not in the before. Once the project has started, right? So maybe after a few months or so, if there are any changes we have identified so far. So the very first thing what is that we do is that this change order request initiation form will be prepared. This change order request form initiation means who has requested and who has given this, what are the related requirements, right? Descriptions, if there is any kind of attachments, and for what reason these changes will happen, is happening now, right? All these things will be mentioned under here. This is what we call it as change request initiation. The first step here is change request initiation will be taken by the change management team or change manager. Business analyst will act as a change manager in most of the projects. So you consider that being a BA, when you are working into business analysis, when it requires changes, you act as a change manager. This is what we call it a change request initiation stands for. So once the change request initiation done, the next was technical evaluation. Because let's say, for example, there were a couple of requirements given by the customer. Want to make some changes. So what kind of evaluation we have to make? We have to make 3 evaluations. One is technical evaluation. Second, budget evaluation. Third is project impact evaluation. Of course, these 3 evaluations will be made by the technical people and project management team. Okay, they do that, not by anyone else. Okay, subject to clarification. Technical evaluation means, is there any additional technology or the infrastructure, or else it may be a software or something like, is it something additionally required for us? Is it possible for us to incorporate? So this is where generally technical evaluation come into picture. Means, is there any kind of changes happens in the existing infrastructure? Whatever was finalized so far, to know that technical evaluation will be made. Point number 1. So that has to be concluded by the technical people, followed by the project management team. They have to conclude and they have to provide detailed information about that. This is point number 1. Point number 2, budget and project evaluation. Budget means, because of the changes were happened, effort increases. If effort increases, automatically budget will also get increased. Not only budget, because of that, even change of the scope might also be taken place. Because in the change of the scope of the project, I have told you, is there any changes may happen in future or not? Right? If it happens and all, whatever the scope we have identified and defined will also be deviated. So will it be impacting on the scope of the change of the project or not, has to be identified by the project management team. Followed by this is that budget is getting impacted due to this. Manpower increases, automatically budget will also get impacted out of it. So budget impact evaluation has to be made. After that, project impact evaluation means how far project is getting impacted. Because application, whatever the functionalities you are talking about, all these functionalities were interconnected, interrelated. If you are making any changes on the existing ones, it may be impact on the other functionalities which were completed successfully. So that should not happen, because if it was happen, what will happen? the complete project will be failed, right? So the complete project will be under miss. In order to reduce this complexity, project impact evaluation has to be made. So if there is any kind of changes which was proposed or initiated by anyone, technical evaluation has to be made, followed by this budget and project impact evaluation should also be made. These are the two different points. Now, budget or project impact evaluation is completed. The next thing was, these are here, you have to mention the projected changes. Projected changes, not the actual ones. Projected means based on the request we have received, based on the evaluation and all, we come to know these are the changes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 9, 10. Right? So some couple of changes we have identified. Those changes followed by the descriptions has to be written here. Followed by this, you have to mention how much timelines it will be taken and how much cost will it be taken for us to complete. This is what we call it as projected. Projected means it's not actual. These are the ones based on the observation we have. These are the ones which we are supposed to do. This is what we call it as projected stands for. So once the projected is done, right? So risk evaluation will be made, right? Whatever the risk is identified in it, that risk evaluation will be made. Normally, this project management will do the risk evaluation. And what kind of risk resolution strategy we want to make out of it? Is it a risk, technical risk and all? How to resolve this? What are the action steps in order to reduce that risk and all everything? This is all comes under risk evaluation, which will be made and completed by the project management team in this context. Based on the risk evaluation and all, the next thing is that whatever we have accepted, whatever we have rejected and deferred, including the reason, each and every point has to be given, reason has to be given. At the same time, customer authorized representative, include project manager, has to sign on the document. Because unless until if there is no signature, those documents will be considered as null void, right? So reason has to be mentioned, project manager followed by the authorized representative has to sign on this. Whatever is approved, whatever are rejected, whatever are deferred. At the same time, we have to see to whom are we going to assign this, who is going to take care of that execution, who is taking care of the execution, to whom are we going to assign this, what will be the targeted completion date, and what are those priorities. Is there any kind of instructions we want to make out of it? What are those instructions? Is there any reference attachment document customer has given? For example, sometimes customer has given some references. May happen, right? Sometimes some attachments and references we come across. Those references attachments has to be mentioned here. Followed by this, when is the actual completion date, followed by the completion date. That has to be mentioned under the execution. Means to whom are we going to assign and all everything that we have to see. Here we have to mention two things. One is target completion, second is actual completion. Target completion means the target what we have identified, finalized. Actual completion may be later, it comes later because this document won't be prepared once in a time, right? Maybe after completion of that, we'll write down the actual completion date. Normally, these both dates should be equal, right? So if it is deviation and all, there are chances that it may delay, right? So actual completion date will be given later, not immediate, once it is completed. And whatever the accepted changes, because based on the review and observation, if we have identified somewhere around 10, doesn't mean that 10 will be implemented, right? So because we have our own criteria and risk is involved in it, based on the risk involvement and all, we will be writing only few tasks. Descriptions will be written, followed by this. How much budget will be taken? What is the cost which is involved in it? And we have to get a signature from the customer authorized representative here. So whenever there are changes happens in any of the project, once the project document was closed, freezed, right? From there onwards, whatever the changes we do, This change order request form has to be prepared by the business analyst. Why are we learning? Because business analyst will act as a change manager, gathering requirements from the customer, see the possibility, and final concluded documents requirements will be shared to the technical team for further execution of the work. This is where generally this assessing the requirement changes and all everything, where it is, assessing the requirement changes and all everything comes into picture. After that, approve of requirements, right? Whatever the requirements were approved, that will be documented officially, and those documents will be given to the technical team to work. But before that, there is another concept called requirement analysis design definition. Requirement analysis design definition means here how to document the requirements is what we are learning, right? But there is some visualization process is also involved in it, because for example, if you take point of sale system, okay, I am asking you guys to develop a point of sale system. Most of the people are not aware of, okay, what point of sale system and how it looks like. How do I explain that? For that, there is a next knowledge area called requirement analysis design definition. In this requirement analysis design definition, what is that we do is that we prepare the diagrams and we give it to the technical team so that those people will understand this accordingly. Who technical team will prepare, business analyst team will prepare so that these people will understand accordingly. So when you talk about requirement lifecycle management, here we are writing down all the documents in a document format, right? Maintaining of requirements, we prepare BRDs, SRS document will be there, functional, non-functional, all that. But there are some visualization we have to do. Some requirements has to be visualized. So this is where generally the next knowledge area called requirement analysis design definition come into picture. Requirements were already analyzed because we have already classified the requirements earlier, you know that. Now design definition means you have to design. How do you design requirements? This is where generally UML diagrams come into picture. We have to prepare some UML diagrams. To prepare UML diagrams, and there are tools, something like Rational Road, Star UML, Visio, Lucid Charts, right? There are a lot of tools are involved in it. End of the day, whichever the tool it was, but end of the day, how to prepare UML diagrams is required. But to start with, how to prepare UML diagrams, there are a lot of diagrams are there. Something like use case, sequence, component, deployment, activity, right? At the same time, class diagram, object diagram, there are a lot of diagrams that are involved. Being a BA, what is that we prepare are two. One is use case diagram. Second is sequence diagram. Okay, these are the two diagrams we are going to prepare. Being a BA from the functional perspective. Object diagram and as well as class diagram are two considered as the technical diagrams. So that I'll show that in a Star UML software. 1 minute. Because here is a Star UML, which is a software which is being used to prepare UML diagrams. Star UML. Because this is easy to install, won't take much time. Trial version, of course. Right. So here, there are different models you can see, right? If you have a lot of diagrams, class diagram, package, object, composite structure, component, deployment, these are all the technical related diagrams. Because, for example, component means what are the hardware and software components are we using for the project? When you're talking about the deployment diagram means if you are going to deploy the application, there are some deployment steps and procedures they have to write. So that is all comes under deployment diagram. At the same time, what we called sequence diagram. Sequence diagram explains you about the sequence process. Use case diagram. So major diagrams, what is that being a BA we prepare is use case and as well as sequence. These are the two diagrams explains you about the sequential process as well as the primary actors and how these are connected with. Now, what is that I am showing you is for this case study of cloud-based point of sale system, assume that we have already finalized cloud-based POS system as our solution. Now I am going to prepare a use case diagram for that, because use case is a standard and static diagram. So that remains static as it is, right? That is not dynamic in nature. But sequence diagram and all everything were dynamic diagrams, because whatever the changes happens in between, we have to make some changes out of it. So use case diagram is a static diagram, which I am going to explain how to prepare. Do remember, after requirement lifecycle management, under requirement analysis and design definition, this comes into picture. So what is that I am explaining is the next knowledge area called requirement analysis design definition. Okay, please do remember this. And this is completed. After that, BRD SRS will be explained. After that, how to write UML diagram, user stories and all everything in Jira. All these will be explained in the next coming this thing. Okay, this is how the next training plan will be like this. Now, I am going to prepare how to prepare a cloud-based point of sale system, right? Because, for example, if nobody knows about what is cloud-based and how it is interconnected, so people should know how to prepare cloud-based point of sale system. Now, whoever we have identified are actors as actors, those people comes under actors here. Now we have to select use case diagram. Whoever are using this application are called actors. So here you can see actor, right? Actor. Maybe a billing agent. Okay. For cloud-based POS system, I'm talking about, right? Maybe in inventory head. Maybe a store manager. Right? So 3 people are there. These 3 people are actors for the project. Now, these people wants to access this POS system, cloud POS system. So you have to consider that CPOS system also. But the CPOS system has a dependency, which is called inventory management system. Inventory management system is a dependency. So here you can see there is an option called dependency, right? So inventory management system and as well as CPOS system has a dependency. Now what a billing agent can do, billing agent can log in, do the billing, right? Whatever the activities they perform is considered and comes under use case. Login. After that, he can prepare billing of items. These are the 2 things which billing agent do. Okay. Now, what an inventory head do? Inventory head wants to see the stock position. Now, what a store manager wants to do, he wants to see the reports. He wants to download the reports or whatever, right? So, reports. But this is a cloud-based point of sale system where it is connecting to the cloud account, cloud environment, Azure cloud. Right? So whatever the information they were writing, everything will be uploaded there, right? So they have the database, everything they are maintaining. So it is being dependent here. This POS system, whatever we are accessing, is depending here because this cloud environment is maintaining all that, right? So this is what it is. Cloud account is maintaining, right? So this CPOS system, you are maintaining it. This is what is required. At the same time, if you want to see the accurate results here and all, you need to connect with the inventory management system for sure. Now, a billing agent wants to log in. So here you can see there is an option called directed association, which will be used to connect with this. Right, so login has to perform. If you want to log in, if you want to do the billing items, what is it required? Login is needed. So there is a dependency. If you want to do billing and all, dependency is login. Because unless until there is no login process completed, this billing of items can't be done by the billing agent here. So once login process is completed, then only this billing items has to be done. Right? So that is what we have to do. Now, an inventory head. What an inventory head do? Inventory head can be stock position, right? So he wants to see the stock position of it, wherein he has to connect with the inventory management system. Now, a store manager. A store manager wants to access the reports. From where is he accessing these reports? These reports they are accessing from the account directly from the cloud account, right? For example. So this is a basic. So whatever I was explaining you is a basic structure of it, not the detailed part of it. So this is how generally a cloud-based point of sale system. If someone is asking that how that process happens on a high-level note, right? For example, if anybody wants to know that, this is how generally a use case diagram which has to be prepared. So based on that, how many sequences we have, those many sequences diagrams has to be prepared for all the functionalities. Because if you see here, in reference to the sequences and all, it has a, if you want to have a sequence diagram and all, the thing is that if you want to prepare a sequence diagram, there is a similarity you can see from use cases. Use case diagram and all, where sequences, what are the sequences? This one we have explained it, right? Where was that? In the use case diagram, I have explained about the scenarios, right? These scenarios, right? These scenarios. These scenarios will be prepared in a sequence diagram format here, right? So sequence diagram is used there. Whatever the success scenario I was explaining you, right? This I explained, right? This process, if you want to explain in diagrammatical format, we prepare a sequence diagram in addition to the use case diagram. Is it clear to everyone? Abhishek, Archita, Janakiraman.
Yeah. So the very first diagram.
Yes.
So very
Yes,
first
sir.
diagram will be use case. Post that will be the sequence diagram.
Sorry?
The very first diagram will be use case
Use
and
case,
post
yes.
that.
Use case.
Then
First is use case. First is use case.
and when you say 3 sequence, like the billing agent login, that one will be further divided into different sequence.
See,
First
for
option, what
example,
option?
for example, you are asking me, Raj, how should it billing happen, or how this process of login happens? What action steps to be taken to login? Okay, for example, if this is the question, what I can do? I can prepare a sequence diagram and I can show you, so that being a technical person, you understand. Do you understand this?
Sure. So it will be kind of workflow kind of thing that will be.
More or less something like, yes. Like for example, if these, how many sequences? Login 1, billing, stock position and reports. You can prepare 4 sequences.
Okay.
Clear? Sequential process. That sequential process, nothing but here. This is the scenario. For example, as an example, I'm showing, right? This scenario. This scenario I want to explain, being a BA. How should I explain this?
Okay, so all these pointers you will change it to kind of process diagram. That will be called
Means visualization. Means whatever you are learning in requirement lifecycle manage is to document it. But only documentation alone may not be sufficient sometimes, right? Some sort of design is required so that people can understand. If you see the diagram, people will understand easily. For example, in spite of explaining about what POS system, for example, if I've given this diagram and if I've given to all those people, can you understand? Not 100, may not be 100%, to an extent possible. Why? Because the process is visualized, right? You can see on the screen, right? In spite of explanation, maybe my language may not be that much communicative, right? To explain. But in spite of that, what I'm doing now, simply I'm preparing a document that I show you, diagram I show you, you can understand this, right? So visualization is also required. Understood? Clear?
Got
Everyone.
it, sir. Thank you.
So like this, sequences we prepare, use cases we prepare, right? So these are all comes under requirement analysis, design definition. Design means how we are going to design the requirements. Means this is how generally this is required. So these documents, what we do, these documents we can copy and we can paste it in the BRD document. For example, this document we have taken, right? So I'm just exporting this diagram as JPEG. Okay, for example, mentioning in the use case diagram 1, what I do and what we do, I'll tell you. Right, for example, this is the diagram. Okay, copy. For example, this is the document, right? This is the BRD doc. For example, right? This is the BRD document. Wherever it is needed, we can copy, right? So in this BRD document, what are the documents we prepare? So these diagrams we can incorporate into that. Clear, everyone? Understood? Abhishek, Harshita, Angel, Janaki Raman,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Manoj, Meena, Sarvi, Kiran, Savita, Sophia, Swati, Vivek. Clear? This is how generally. So documents we have to prepare, some sort of visualization is required. Hence, this is how generally visualization will be taken place. So once everything is done, final conclusion after that, these documents will be, you are communicating to the developers and all, and they do the remaining work. Coding, testing, everything will be taken care of by them later. And meanwhile, any changes and all, everything, you do those changes. Meanwhile, right? That's a continuous process. Doing changes in between, right? All these are the continuous process, because this is not a one-day activity, right? If there is any changes, again you do. But use cases can't be changed because these are the static. Because what is that you do here, right? It's a static one. But what can be changed? Sequence can be changed. For example, login process. Initially, customer has given one process. After that, customer wants to add two-step verification, second step, two-step verification process. So what we can do, use case diagram has sequence diagram has an option where you can add few more things to the existing ones. That also can be done. Understand everyone? Clear?
Yeah.
Right. In the next week, what is that I'm going to explain about BRD, SRS, how to write user stories and all in Jira, using that cloud-based POI system. At the same time, to explain about risk analysis and all, small points are there. Risk analysis, all that I'll explain. Then I'll go to the because these documentations, if I explain, it deviates. Hence, I have not explained those documents, followed by immediately user stories. Everything will be shown in one class. Means that is as separate after completion of this. So diagram, we have one more diagram left over, sequence diagram, followed by this BRD, software requirement specification. Next, user stories writing using Jira. From there, it is complete. Clear? Understood?
Sure, sir. Are we done for the day? Because I need to go
Yeah,
somewhere.
it is done for today.
Yeah.
We'll meet again on next week. And there is some assignment I have given. Possible, please do that. Possible, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, sir, definitely.
Okay, guys.
Try to attempt that.
Have a great weekend too.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.